Welcome to Truth Uncompromised. I am your host, Rhonda. Join us every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Truth is peace. Truth is justice and freedom to love, live, and be. Music provided by SourceVibrations.com. I am love. I am peace. I am free. I have abundance. I have everything within me. For I was, for I am, for I always be. We are love. We are peace. We are free. We have abundance. We have everything within us. For we are, for we will always be. For Mother Earth is love. For Mother Earth has peace. For Mother Earth is free. For Mother Earth has abundance. For Mother Earth has everything within her. For she was, for she is, for she will always be. And so it is spoken. So it has been written, and it is done.
All right, family. Welcome to the Truth Uncompromised show. I am your host, Rhonda, and tonight is February 7th. We have a great show planned for you. We are continuing with our series, The Forgotten Black Nobility and the Americas Part 3. So I'm really excited about tonight. Let me bring on my co-host. Let me bring on Brother Sean, and I see Sis Sandra there. So here we go. Peace and love, brother. How are you?
Wholeness and power, sis. I'm well. How about you?
I'm good. It's good to hear your voice.
Likewise.
All right. Let's bring on Sis Sandra. Peace and love, sis. How are you?
Well, peace and love to you, sis. I'm doing pretty good. And yourself and Brother Sean and the family?
I'm well, sis. I'm well. Good to hear your voice.
Thank you. Same to you.
All right. Okay.
And to Brother Sean as well. Good to hear his voice.
Likewise, sis. Likewise.
Indeed. Okay. We'll go ahead on with the fuckery. Sis, do you have anything that you wanted to discuss?
Well, I ran across some information about how our people are cheating us so bad that it's getting people killed pretty much and thrown in jail. And one of the issues I ran across is that right to travel stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they really, really, really push that we don't need driver's license and we have the right to travel. But they're not telling really what it means according to the law, to the books they have of like Black's Law's Dictionary and stuff like that. And people need to look at it. I'm just going to do part of it, the right to travel. Basic constitutional right exemplified in case of persons applying for welfare assistance in a state in which they have not resided. So, I mean, and I can go on, but I'm not going to read it all. But it's not even what they tell people, that you have a right to travel because this is your land and this is this and this is that, you know. I'm like, are you serious? And it takes me back to that young woman. What state was that? Was that New York or something? That she barricaded herself into her house when they came to her house and they killed her in front of her child and all that kind of stuff. So
I don't remember.
Corn Gaines. Her name was Corn Gaines.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Gaines. Yeah, that was her. And they killed her because she felt that she was obligated to do whatever she wanted because this is, you know, she has the right to travel. And they asked for a license and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, people are refusing to, you know, submit to those kind of things because our people are telling them this is what the right to travel means. But this is the Black's Law Dictionary. I think it was, let me get my notes here. I think it was the 6th edition. And it is with pronouncements and stuff like that. And it's from 1891 to 1991. This is not what they be telling us. These Moors and these people with this right to travel stuff, this is not what the law says, and people are getting in trouble. So I got kind of upset with that because that I wanted to bring up so people who listen, who deals with that kind of stuff, they need to know what they're dealing with before they go out there and say these things to the so-called leaders of our country who run this bird. And also I wanted to say that as far as and it really bothers me that we don't know where we stand legally in this place. And, you know, like I was listening to David Duke today, and they think that they're being shafted and given the wrong turn, and because they're white. And then they say we get more than they do and all that kind of stuff. And it seems like a double cross, double cross. Like Trump is being accused of not, you know, giving the white man his due, and he's giving the Jews the due. And I'm like, wait a minute, y'all guys, this is some crazy stuff going on. It's really crazy. Because they were talking about his presidential speech. I didn't hear it. I fell asleep. So we're just in the midst of a lot of confusion. And I was just listening to all these people and their opinions of it all. And I'm like, I don't know about you, but it's getting on my nerves. So
I understand. I understand. I hear you, sis. You know, we had a young lady call, 2 weeks ago, Sis Dorier, and I thank her for sharing her story with us on her journey. Last week with with dealing with the courts. You know, and I hear exactly what you're saying, sis, and that's why I'm always adamant with the family that you aren't supposed to be listening to anyone as it related to matters of who you are and what capacity you stand on your land. It is everyone's responsibility to do their own research.
Exactly.
And folks are getting locked up because they're using someone else's doctrine without fully doing the research, and they are going under these titles, and it's getting them hemmed up.
That's right.
So, if folks are going to go down the route of, they're not going to get privileges from the statutes and codes via the licensing system or any of those other statutes and codes, you have to enter and understand why you are doing what you're doing based on your research, not on someone else's regurgitation.
Exactly.
Now, in my opinion, this is just my humble opinion, what gets most melanated people tripped up is the fact that they're using different titles instead of claiming who they are, which is indigenous to the land.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because soon as you start using another title, that puts you under a certain jurisdiction. And if you don't know those things, consider yourself, get ready to be locked up. So it is extremely, extremely important for you to do your research, because when you're throwing these titles and terms around, there is a certain jurisdiction that you fall under, and now because they have upped the terrorist list, it will also put you in a category to be treated with hostility in a terroristic way. So, again, I say if you're going to challenge their statutes and codes, you best be aware of what you're doing from your fully understanding. You have to stand in your own knowledge of who you are. Because me personally, if I'm going to get hemmed up, I'm going to get hemmed up from my motherfucking own inner and understanding, not what somebody else handed me. But yes, your point is very, very well taken, sis. I'm sure you know a lot of people. I certainly know a lot of people that have been hemmed up from listening to other people on how they should handle these administrative matters that they are calling legal. And it's because folks did not do their due diligence and apply the information personally to themselves. And that's whether or not you're dealing with something as simple as a traffic ticket to licensing, on down to foreclosures and other serious what they're calling legal matters or criminal matters as well. You have to do that research for yourself, family. Now, it's okay for, if you want to take somebody else's information, but you're supposed to be picking it apart, digging into it, and seeing how it allegedly applies to you. And, I'm of the school of thought, I research and study it all. And that's when you can dig through the truth, and use your discernment. Because a lot of times when people are trying to use this information, they really don't know what they're doing, and it shows. It shows. All that administrator have to do is say a couple of key phrases, and based on how you respond, they know whether or not you know your stuff. So,
right.
You have to know what you're doing, because when you're going down that particular avenue, you are saying that you are responsible for self, that you are not a minor. So that means you should know what capacity you are standing in. Okay? And if you don't even know these simple phrases that I'm just naming, that really means that you don't need to be going down that route of challenging administrative processes. Do your studying, go within, and stand in firmly who you are based on your inner and overstanding, not based on what someone has handed to you and you're trying to apply it. Because you'll get yourself, it's really unnecessarily. You don't have to. But thank you, sis, for bringing that up. Great point. But as far as David Duke, I really don't give a fuck what he's talking about. Because, again, he has no standing as it concerns this land. So what melanated people are doing is none of his concern or anyone else's concern that is not indigenous to the land. End of story. So I don't give a damn what him or any other person that is not indigenous to the land is talking about. Now, if he don't like it, pack your shit and go back to your own origin. So we can solve these problems real simple. I don't entertain the fuckery on what somebody else then said, not indigenous to the land. Because they're here illegally and they're on borrowed time. So, but okay, that's my 2 cents. But thank you for bringing that up, sis, because that's important for the family to know. Brother Sean, did you have any? Go ahead on with the fuckery.
Mm-hmm. And considering we're talking about forgotten black nobility, and to mention the State of the Union address. You so-called African Americans were only addressed twice. Both prisoners who were let out. So basically, this system is telling you, I might let some of you darkies out of jail a little early. That was pretty much his message to African Americans. Now, it's about now. Y'all don't see the writing on the wall. That he's not trying to say, quote unquote, black folks, but African Americans.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to say the system.
Right.
And he's trying to make it appear a little more friendlier. But his main concern is immigrants. Immigrants are his people. He said that he wants lots and lots of immigrants to come here. They say that immigrants is what makes America great. I say immigrants make the corporation great.
Right.
That make our battle that much harder. And y'all want more people here. People that don't belong here. Y'all just invite anybody and everybody. Oh, let them come on in, everybody. Come on. If that's your mindset, and you think that you're African American, why not invite all the motherfuckers to Africa? You're saying, oh, y'all can go to Africa. Y'all talk about how vast it is and how everything in the world is in Africa. I guess everything in the world is in Africa, but y'all. I mean, I don't see what the problem is. Income tax season right around the corner. And taxes coming. I don't want to see no rims and cars and Jordans. I want to see plane tickets being bought. want to see people saying goodbye in their native African tongue. And I want to see how many Africans over there waiting on your ass when you get over there to greet you and say, brother, we are one, welcome home. Not going to happen. But, you know, Trump about to save you. And they're waiting. In Africa. Wakanda. They're waiting for you, my brother, my sister. We are here. We are waiting for you to come back home.
Right.
Buckery.
Yeah. Very good point, Brother Sean. You know, Ghana, don't they have an open invitation for those African Americans to...
Oh, yeah, the corporation Ghana?
Yeah, the corporation Ghana has an open invitation for folks to go over there. So you're absolutely correct on that. And then your second point, in which, you know, I've been screaming for the longest regarding Trump card, you know, his first priority will always be the corporation, just like you said. Now, yes, they are probably behind the scenes doing some different things, but that's only for the best interest of the corporation. So it's like it's in-house fighting among the corporation. So they're doing cleanup among the corporation. But by no means is it that the indigenous people or those that want to go under the African American label or those that want to go under the black label, by no means is that going to benefit you. So, you know, if folks are happy with, you know, him giving a address with releasing to quote, quote, African Americans from a harsh sentence that never should have been imposed on them in the first place, that really says a lot for the people that's championing that. And to me, what that says is, you know, you have gotten in such a desperate place that you'll accept the scraps. And you're accepting it from an organization, meaning the U.S. corporation, that's illegally on your land. So by divine birthright, they're not supposed to be issuing any type of justice to you at all. So to me, that's a very, very sad state of affair. But again, when we don't understand who we are, we get caught up under certain jurisdictions.
Right.
Because none of that shit that they're doing on the corporation side should apply to you as an indigenous person to the land. And indigenous people get themselves tripped up every time because they want to straddle the fence. And you cannot mix the two. Because once you cross your toe over on that corporate side, you are under their jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's what you want, that's fine, that's cool. But enter and overstand, that means you go by their rules. Okay? So this is the confusion state that melanated folks are. You know, calling yourself a crayon color, then calling yourself two continents. So who are you really? What proof do you have on the label that you have placed upon yourself or that you have allowed someone to place upon you? And until you get clear about who you are, you'll always be chasing in circles, and you'll always be looking for someone or something to deliver you. And it's not going to happen when the responsibility is yours, on your home, on your land. So, yes, I totally agree with you, Brother Sean. I was receiving messages to watch that address, and I was sitting there like, well, what the fuck is so special about it? It's just the same business as usual for the corporation. People can't see this. And people analyzing it. Well, you see how such and so clap. I don't give a fuck about none of that. That's a corporate game that they're playing. That has nothing to do with me. So, very, very good point, Brother Sean. Very, very good point. Thank you for that. Okay, so mine is kind of blending into tonight's topic, so I'm going to hold it because I did want to share something with the family real quick, and you all probably, you probably been hearing about this. The poles, meaning the magnetic poles, it's really, really, really ramping up, where the mainstream media is starting to report on it. Now, I've seen several publications over the last week talking about how the magnetic pole has shifted. They said, I think, like 11 miles to the east, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that. So there was this one gentleman, and I should have wrote his name down, his YouTube channel. I apologize. He's coming out making the prediction that within the next 5 years, and he said probably sooner, that the magnetic poles will have totally flipped because they are moving very, very rapidly so. And he said that pole is now over Siberia and Asia. And so they're going to literally be getting freezed out. Okay, so pay attention. This is just one story that came out off of website Motherboard, and this was on the 28th. But I mean, there's literally stories coming out every day regarding the magnetic pole, and it's to the point now where it's on mainstream media, although not making a big deal about it, but they are mentioning it. This one is saying Earth's magnetic field almost collapsed 565 million years ago. Our planet's core probably started solidifying in the late Ediacaran period, which recharged the magnetic field in a nick of time. Earth's magnetic field, which protects life from intense solar radiation. So now that they're not telling folk in mainstream media when they mention that magnetic pole, they talk about the pole has moved and how the Earth's compasses are going to reflect that, and then they have to update all of the GPS software to reflect it. But what they are not talking about is that UV radiation level has really, really jumped. And it's coming from both ways, which they're not talking about. So the UV radiation coming from the sky and also coming from the ground. Okay, now that's what they're not talking about, which they should, but they're not, because there are, the Caucasian race, their particular skin, they don't have enough melanin in their skin to protect them from that solar radiation. So that's where they're just totally goddamn wrong for not putting that out. Okay, but anyhow, Earth's magnetic field, which protects life from intense solar radiation, collapsed 565 million years ago, according to a study published Monday in Nature Geoscience. If the magnetic field had collapsed, life on Earth would have faced severe challenges because the solar wind would likely strip the planet of its atmosphere and pelt the surface with harmful radiation. Luckily, our planet's molten core probably began to solidify during the last Etymology period, according to the new paper. This recharged Earth's magnetic field right when it was at its weakest point. Now, 500 million times later, Earth's magnetic field is 10 times stronger than it was during this early era. Let me see what else they're saying, because they're starting a lie up in here. Let me see. The Earth's core is thought to have been entirely liquid at some point. The question is, when did it begin to solidify? So they're estimating that the collapse of the magnetic field happened 500 million to 2.5 billion years ago. Let me see, any other thing. Crystals were key to the researcher's study because Earth's magnetic field leaves its fingerprint in some minerals by influencing the direction and orientation of lattice formation. Researchers examined feldspar and pyroxene crystals from the Etymology age rock near Seppelei, which shows that the magnetic field was going haywire during that late period by reversing its polarities 20 times faster than it does today. These are signs of an imminent geodynamic collapse, the team reported. The fact that the field got stronger after this time instead of collapsing suggests that nucleation began and gave Earth's dynamo the juice it needed to beef up the field. Okay, so I'm not going to read the rest, but the purpose of reading is because they're talking in codes. Okay, so they're giving us some story 565 years ago that the magnetic field collapsed and it flipped. But then they turn around and say, but our particular situation that we're in today, it's only collapsing at a much slower rate. When other folks that have been following it for the last 10 years is saying the opposite, that the magnetic pole movement has been really, really rapid. And according to the one gentleman, and I'll have to get that particular YouTube video source for you. I'll get it when I play one of the videos. I'll bring back that source. He is predicting within the next 5 years. And this particular gentleman, I've been following his channel for the last couple months. And he's pretty much been right on the money regarding the movement of that magnetic pole. Okay, so in other words, what he's come out with, then he's been correct. Then the media is forced to reveal partially what he's been saying. And the only reason that they are disclosing that information is because now the compasses are, proving that the pole is moving, and because of the severe weather that's going on over in Europe and Asia. Okay, so I'm saying all of that to say, just start paying attention and reading for yourself on how Mother Earth's poles are shifting, because we are literally witnessing the flipping of her magnetic field, and it will change the climate of the planet drastically, and they know it's going to change it drastically. Now, there is a story floating around in mainstream media. I was shocked. I think it was CNN that put the story out. I'm going to try to find it in my notes, saying that a mini ice age, occurred during the time that invasions were going on in the Americas on the indigenous people, and how as the indigenous people were being slaughtered, it literally, they admitted that it put the planet into a mini ice age. And if I'm not mistaken, that ice age was once again over in Europe. I'll have to find, none of my articles are showing up, and I know I've been saving this stuff, but anyhow, that's how it goes sometimes. None of this is coincidence. This is all a part of the vibration rising to a higher level. So just pay attention, family. So that's all I have on that. I'm not going to drag it out anymore. All right. Okay. We are going to get into tonight's main topic on the Forgotten Black Nobility and the 13 colonies. Just a quick recap of what we discovered last week. We discussed how when war broke out over in Europe, and again, we're speaking on when the melanated, aka black, royals were in leadership positions, a war broke out amongst those particular leaders and the church, and specifically with King James set, we are talking the Catholic Church. So we found out that rebellion broke out, and they started to ship folks to the Americas. So particularly Brits were shipped to the Americas, and when we say Americas, we mean North America, the mainland, and also on the Caribbean islands. And this also happened in Ireland. And as a matter of fact, they were saying in 1641 that an Irish Rebellion broke out, and the melanated folks in Ireland were literally being slaughtered, and they were also being shipped over to the Americas. And the book, again, the one of the main sources that we're using for this series is actually two books by Lee Cummings, The Negro Question Part 4, The Missing Link, and The Negro Question Part 6, The 13 Black Colonies. But anyhow, he was stating that the Black Irish that were shipped over to the Americas most of Jamaica, or Jamaica, because we learned the week before last that the letter J did not come into existence or was not pushed until the 1700s. So anyway, Jamaica and Barbados are where most of the Irishmen were sent. And it is believed that the Jamaicans and the Barbados of the Americas today consist of Irish bloodline. But the other interesting part that we learned, because according to the book, it was about 300,000 that they're documented that were shipped. So 300,000 melanated Brits and Irishmen that were shipped over to the Americas, and 20,000 Africans. Okay, and so in this book, Brother Lee Cummings, he literally went to the ship manifest, and I've talked about that several times, even here when in the Americas, when folks are claiming to be African American, did you check those ship manifests to see who was coming where off of those ships? Because they have records of those. And the reason they have records of those, because they wanted to keep up with their commerce to see who needed to pay taxes on what. So that's how he got a lot of the research concerning who was being shipped where. He got it directly from those ship manifests. Okay, so this is once again proving that the numbers that are thrown around about Africans being shipped over to the Americas is grossly overstated. Okay, and which also proves why they can never produce specific ship. The manifests that we are finding are literally from Europe with the most of the folks. We're finding the manifest from Europe to the Americas, and then manifest from the Americas to the islands, the Caribbean islands, back to the Americans, back to North America rather, or between ports. So meaning going from the Carolina port, going up to a New York port or a Boston port. Those are the ship manifests that we are finding moving human cargo, aka slavery. We're not finding, millions and millions of ship manifests from Africa to the Americas. Okay, so that's all I have for the recap. I'll pause in case Sis or Brother Sean, excuse me, you want to put something on it.
I know some people who said they were Irish. Melanated people said they were Irish.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true, because their mother came from the islands. And just what you
really?
Yes. Just what you just said, that's what happened. Because I said, that makes sense why they came from the island. And Dane Calloway, I think that's his first name, said that 10,000 Indians were shipped from Carolinas to the islands every year. They had bounties on Indians, and if they caught them, they shipped them to the islands. So
that would make sense.
When people say, I can't get a Social Security card, and they're Jamaicans I talk to, and they say, I can't get a Social Security card, I said, you should tell them that you're an American, because that's what you are, because the islands belong to America, and they shipped you over there. And if you take your DNA, you'll probably find out where you came from here. So I do know people, melanated people, who said they had Irish background. But you know, these DNA tests, they kind of cheat and leave that out of there.
Right. Well, it's. I'm sorry, sis. You go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
And they'll give you a little teensy-weensy dot that you can't hardly see, that from Ireland or from Wales or from someplace like that. They'll give you a teensy-weensy. So you really can't understand why that dot's so small you can't hardly see it. But that's your, you know, the origin actually, according to what I know, is from here, because the Mayans are the oldest civilization, and they went over there, and they settled over there, and then they got caught up in them wars and came back over here. So that's my understanding from what I read happened to our people. We came from here, and we went over there before the Pangea, with the Pangea, and then they got caught up over there and was shipped back over here during the reverse slave trade from England to the Americas.
Now, it's interesting that you brought up, and I'm glad you did, because you just reminded me of something that I wanted to remind the family of. Last year, Britain had reneged on.
Yeah, they did.
You know where I'm going with this, sis? They reneged on Jamaicans having citizenship, because they had gave a bunch of Jamaicans back in the 40s, if I'm not mistaken. In the 40s, they gave them citizenship. And then last year, they snatched it from up under them and deported them. And so the Jamaicans were very upset, because you're talking generations that, if you've been there since the 40s, that's a long time. You have several generations at that point. So with this new information coming out, I said, oh, hell to the no. That's why they did what they did. Because those particular Jamaicans probably are more than likely
American.
They were Britain.
Yeah,
because
that's
they shipped them over to Jamaica, so they were Brits.
Right.
So meaning they had no standing to deport them, because their lineage was there before the current regime was even there. So I find that highly, highly interesting. So really the Jamaicans, just like it's probably going to be for most of us in the Americas, because your bloodline is probably mixed with folks that were sent from Europe over here, and they married into indigenous people here. So your bloodline, you have a claim to both, in other words. And that the Jamaicans and the Barbados is an excellent example of that.
But there's another point. France and England is starting to teach their children that the Europeans are not the first British or French. It was melanated people. Yeah, they're putting it out there. They're putting it out there to their kids. The melanated people are the first Brits and French people.
Very good. Well, good for them. Kudos to them. And it should be taught across the board, not just to the babies, but to the folks currently residing there as well, because it would make sense why they see all of these particular coat of arms with highly melanated people, or they see all of these statues with highly melanated people. It would make a lot more sense to them. So that's a good thing if they're doing that. Now, I can't make this stuff up, y'all. Let me take a swig of my little my water. Now, y'all know Henry Gates does the little PBS thing, right, with the little DNA situation, okay, where he does the DNA for celebrities. So this week he had Michael Strahan on there, and so he was tracing his DNA. And to show you, see, if you have started to research your own lineage, and that's why I'm going back to the beginning of the show when we talked about dealing with these statutes and codes and knowing who you are. And a big part of that is searching your lineage. But if you have searched your lineage, you will understand and understand those census records. You'll see the flow of the census record, and it'll start to tie in to your independent research of being indigenous to the land, okay, and these missing gaps that are unaccounted for. So Gates is going over Strahan's lineage, and I don't remember which side of the family, which side was which, but on one of the sides of the family, he said, your folks was in Kentucky, and then they show back up, I think he said on the 1870 census, and they owned their landowners and in Texas. And he said, that's a big accomplishment, being descendants from slaves. And so I can't remember. Wait, it gets better, girl. I was sitting there like, got big, and my sister came over and she saw what was on. She said, "Oh shit." She finna go in. So I can't remember if Strahan, asked how they got to Texas, but Gates said, "Well, I'm assuming they migrated to Texas after they were freed as slaves." And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, so they was freed as slaves in Kentucky. Then they went to Texas, and now they doing well, and they had their own land. And then his same family literally founded a town in Texas. So they were well-to-do people. And I'm sitting here like I could just jump through this TV and slap them motherfucking glasses off his face. Because you're sitting here lying. You got a missing gap of time. How did these people become that wealthy? Supposedly they were slaves in Kentucky. They ended up in Texas, landowners, doing relatively well, and was doing well enough to founded their own town and started up schools, this, that, and the third. So that was the first thing. So then that's not even the kicker. Then the other side of the family, he said, guess who is your 39th great-grandfather? And Strahan's like, who? King Charles. I said, proves my fucking point.
That is so funny.
Proves my point of the integration of the European melanated, aka blacks, and the rulership of those kingdoms. And as they were being overthrown, they either fled to the Americas or they were sent to the Americas. And the bloodlines have blended in with the indigenous people, the melanated indigenous people of the Americas. So here's this one particular gentleman, Strahan, shows the perfect example of that in his particular lineage, except they're not disclosing the full truth. So one side of the lineage is rolling all the way up to King Charles. And if you do a little research on King Charles, his history was, it was really, really a trip. And he is literally one that stamped his name as issuing charters in some of the land over here. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Then you have the other side who just, they were slaves and they became well off some type of way just by fucking miracle. So perfect example of what we're discussing tonight. I'm sorry, go ahead, sis.
Did you hear that Elizabeth Warren had put on her, I think it was her college records that she's an American Indian?
Yeah.
Born in Texas. Texas is and always was Indian territory. And the Indians are not ghost folks. They're not Europeans. They're melanated.
Oh, I didn't know she was from Texas.
That's what she had on that thing. I almost passed out. She had Oklahoma and Texas. I said, what? American Indian? Is she a Negro?
At least she can do the decency to produce the motherfucking card that her folks paid $5 for.
Or maybe 10.
10, whatever the case may be. Produce some type of record. Yeah, it's a joke. It's a joke. The one thing that's not going to, it's not going to help her in her political / corporate career endeavors. As a matter of fact, it's going to harm her. So yeah, it's a joke at this point.
Yeah, her parents or somebody in her ancestry came in there and cheated and said they were Indians. And she thought
in her people's motherfucking defense, they probably didn't do none of that. Her ass probably just came up with that
cheated
in their defense. Because if
She's the
your
only
family,
one in the family.
huh?
She's the only one in the family claiming that.
Right, because that's my next point. I see you.
Okay, then that's she lying.
Yeah, that's my point. Because if you are claiming that's what your family is, then you got more access. She got more access to shit than we have access to. She should be able to produce a motherfucking record.
Right.
That's how she went to college.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. That's exactly what it was. She wanted some scholarship money or an edge on getting into law school or whatever the hell it was, so she used that.
Isn't that something?
And it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me. This whole
but then they changed to Native American now, you see, because she can't be American Indian because according to the Webster 1828, they described us as copper-colored. She's not nearly copper-colored at all.
Right.
Nowhere. Absolutely.
Right. So now if she want to say Native American, that's her business. Okay, you was born here. Okay, cool, whatever. But, even the Native Americans are offended by that. So that's damn it, that's on her. She dug herself that hole, so that's her problem. But that's a perfect
Recapping from last week and King James. At the Imam family, he also went by the name Jacob. It's Yakub, Island of Dr. Moreau.
Yep.
The Black Moon story. And you got more in there. Let's not forget King James was a Moor.
Yep.
That was all I wanted to put on there.
Oh, okay. You just want to remind the family, yes, that he's claiming that Jew bloodline, and that bloodline goes all the way back to the Romans. He said they are the Romans, et cetera, et cetera. So I found that extremely interesting. So 313. Apologize if you still want to put something on it. Just press *1. I don't see you lit up anymore, so I'm not sure if you still have something to put on it, and I'm not going to open you up if you didn't want to be. So press *1 if you still wanted to put something on it. Okay then. So we got that out the way. So here we go. I do want to get into Dublin. All right. We need to discuss Dublin. All right. Which is interesting because I had to really rethink some things as I learning this information of the indigenous melanated royals where they weren't even indigenous. So I got to back that up because that bloodline of James and them admitted that they really come from like the Russia area. They were in Spain for a little bit, and then came over to Europe. So Scotland, Britain, and all of those places. Mm-hmm.
I hate to interrupt you, but considering you mentioned that they come from the Russia area. Tartaria?
Uh-huh. Yep. We're going to bust that out. We're going to bust that all the way out.
You know, if you look at the Bible, and Noah's three sons, Japheth went from here up to Europe, near Russia and Germany. They did travel that way. It's in the scripture. Was that a cover up from where they came from originally? Because it does say they left and went that way. Japheth's part of the thing. So Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Ham, Shem, and Japheth. That was his three sons. And Japheth was overcome in Europe by somebody. And the story is in the script by the fallen ones that they were overcome. So, but they did leave from the origin. I'm assuming here, since it's Butler's story, that we were here first, and then they went up there.
And that could be very well so. I'm not going to dispute that, but I just want to keep the family in mind that they did not go and were the first people on those particular lands. There were already indigenous people there. And we know that by the book of Demonology, reading through that book, where they were clearly trying to convert the indigenous people from their particular spirituality into their Christianity. So even if that is accurate, what they are saying in the Bible, what I want people to start to really rethink and rethink really well. And Brother Sean, we just listened to that video speaking on this, that that Bible is only for a certain group of people. It does not cover all people across the land. And that's what keeps getting people tripped up. So I'm not going to dispute if, that's what the Jews say, that's fine. But they did not inhabit, or they inhabited, they did not seed, that's a better word. They did not seed, or they are not indigenous across this entire planet. Everywhere they went, there were already indigenous people there. That's why everywhere they went, wars broke out. Because their particular God, religion, faith, whatever the case may be, that's what they were told to do. Go into these lands. But that does not mean because they were told by their particular religion or God to go into these lands that there weren't other people there. There had to be other people there because if not, there wouldn't be wars that broke out everywhere that they went. So that is why each particular culture or each particular indigenous person or people have their own indigenous stories. So, but that's a very good point. Very good point.
The video that I had sent you from the Vatican translator.
Yes. I see you, 832, brother. We coming to you. Yes, Brother Sean.
Yeah, on there he was saying that the word God wasn't originally in the Bible, period.
Yeah, that tripped me out. He sure did. Yep.
And he said that the Elohim are the ones that created them, and that the Elohim, they saying that Yahweh is the only God in the Bible.
Yep, that's what he said.
And he said that the Elohim created them, and that the Elohim are flesh and blood, drinking and eating beings. Only thing he failed to do was give them a quote-unquote color. He failed to describe them. But he said they were flesh and blood beings. He didn't say reptilians. Or none of that stuff.
Nope.
He said they wasn't gods. Well, I mean, you think about it, considering King James and his history with the Catholics and him allegedly being Yaqub and this, that, and other, and him being Lord, and, you know, James considering it was I am. Is he the great I am?
Yep. Yep.
So, I mean, there's a whole lot deeper than what people think it is.
It is. And to be honest, it's a lot simpler than what people think it is.
You know, it is how they translated the scriptures, because the scriptures, if you translate it from a concordance using the more aggressive description of what the word means, it tells that story you just told, Brother Sean. It doesn't tell all this passive crap that they try to teach us, that their God is loving and all this kind of stuff. That's not what that scripture says. If you use like say for instance, the concordance have, like a dictionary, has several meanings to a word. And what they did was use it, whoever translated this stuff, used the more passive, loving, unthreatening part of who God or Yahweh was. That's how everybody gets this wrong understanding, is how you translate the words.
And that particular guy in the video said that, let me try to pull the name of that video. He said that stuff was purposely mistranslated. He purposely said it. And that's why when we were reading all of the particular text, when it brought up God and Lord, we made sure that we put an emphasis on who are they referring to when they say God and Lord? And, you know, the way that they use the capital G and the small g. And when we lined up the Lost Book of Enki with the Bible, and it pointed out the other beings that were involved. So, yeah, so that's why people have to use more than just one book to think that they know everything. Yes, sir.
And that also took me to that other video I sent you from the Crow House dude, I think it was.
Yes.
And it's amazing how even the quote-unquote white man knows that we're not all the same.
Yep.
Yeah.
He said it.
You know, and he also talked about how people are offended by who they actually are. Everybody want to be something else and ashamed to be who they are and would prefer to be corporate fictions and slave names and this, that, or the other.
While you're getting the game ran on you. Yep. While you're getting the game ran on you. And he said, you know, just like the black people are indigenous to the land in the Americas.
Right, and he said he didn't care about who was here first, though. So that just lets you know.
He did say that. He did say
that. That just lets you know that they know, but they don't plan on giving up shit, whether it's theirs or not.
Yeah.
True that, although he's from Australia, so that's why he really was singing that song. But that particular video Brother Sean's talking about is called We've All Been Played. That's on YouTube. And then the one that we're talking about is called Vatican Translator. Let me get the exact name. Vatican Translator. Come on, kick over. Sometimes this thing goes so slow. Vatican Translator is literally crawling. Vatican Translator, Alien God Genetical Clone Humans. Mario Biglino. So that's Vatican Translator, Alien God, Genetically Cloned Humans, Mario Biglino. And so supposedly he was a translator of the original text of the Bible, the one that the Vatican has, not what they put before the public, but what the Vatican has. He was a translator for the Vatican, supposedly and allegedly. Okay, so those are the two videos that you can definitely go watch. I would recommend them both because both videos give a very, very interesting perspective, and they do have a lot of truth to them. Okay, so let me go to 832, and then I see you 314. 832, your line is open.
Brother!
Hey, brother.
My sisters from other vistas. Thunderbird feathers up.
Feathers up.
Crackers, niggas, down. Judah, sitting on the throne of Mount Olympus, throwing down thunderbolts tonight. I want, before I forget, have any of y'all seen Glass? I'm going to do a movie review before I wrap up tonight. But if you haven't seen Glass, Rhonda, I think it's almost jaw-dropping like The Matrix when I describe what I got.
Yeah, a lot of people have been talking about it. Yeah.
But here's the deal. Sandra was correct. One slight addition, Sandra. It was her bar card as an attorney. I'm talking about Elizabeth Warren. It was on her bar card that she pronounced herself American Indian in Texas, and she has not practiced law in Texas for decades, presumably. But that is the document that you are looking at in the news front. And the bar is a British registry, is it not, son?
That's true.
Yep.
Foreign entity.
Okay. Well, that's according to Elizabeth Warren, and now they're hounding her Caucasoid European ass to say, are there other documents where you're claiming to be American Indian? I think what you, Sandra, said, where is their card that they paid $5? Being that I am in Texas, which, by the way, the word is Tejas, Tejas, and it is not of Spanish origin. As Sandra has so eloquently posed out, it is an Indian, quote unquote, I'm using air quotes, an Indian designation. Now, as I transition, I wanted to share something with you for your consideration, all three of you. Chief Alonzo Langley, which I believe is still out of country, he is a contractor and sometimes working over in Afghanistan and Iraq and Kuwait, et cetera. But he is an advocate of forensic genealogy, which I am now pursuing a path with one of his experts. However, I will point out something for your consideration tonight. The so-called corporate or organic constitution, there are only two populations designated. We are familiar with white, male, free, over 21, and land owning. And I've brought this up repeatedly already in the past. The other population identified as Indian, not taxed. Keep that under your bonnet for a minute. Just keep that in consideration. As the chief points out in his commentary, that is the only legal documentation we have, either being referenced as Negro and or Indian. Now, this African stuff, and you've been very, specific and illuminating in the past few weeks, really doesn't come about until, I know they like to say this 20 and odd Africans in 1619, that's what we're going to be beat over the head all this year, the 400th anniversary. But it's really in the 1800s when we're talking about a kind of a shell game with the Indian Removal Act in 1830. Then the end of the Civil War in 1865, and I believe Taj, Tariq Bey, and other so-called Moors very eloquently point out the actual ratified 13th Amendment with 20 sections states very specifically in Article 12 that no one of African descent shall ever be citizens of this nation, a la Dred Scott, Plessy versus Ferguson. Okay? So we're talking about a dichotomy here that's causing a lot of this confusion, and we already know about the plagiarist mythology of Alex Haley and Kunta Kinte. Now, I'm saying all that to set the context to give you the movie review eventually of Glass. I'd like to use this as the simplest descriptor that I've been sharing with some friends this past week. We are gumbo, okay? But we're not okra, rice, peas, shrimp, chicken, crab. You feel what I'm saying? We're not even the root. What is the stock? You feel me, my sister? As my two great queens I know probably can burn in the kitchen. What is the stock of the root? That's our original inhabitant ancestors. You feel me? All the rest of these people are genetically grafted onto us. And we spend much of our time in this dilemma of searching for identity in fragments. Okay? Now, let me give you the context of Glass and see what you think about it. I don't want to spoil it, but it's very intriguing to me. If you're familiar with Unbreakable, did you ever see that with Bruce Willis?
I think I did. I don't remember.
These movies are from M. Night Shyamalan. If you're familiar with The Sixth Sense, I See Dead People, or Lady of the Lake, or these are the genre of M. Night Shyamalan, who is a quote unquote Indian, air quotes, from Hindustan.
Right.
Okay, see, most people don't know India is a corporate colonial term of the British Empire.
It is.
The original name of that land is Hindustan, so there are no Indians. There's only a reference to indigo, as in indigo ink, as in a potential color or descriptor. And when you get over there in Hindustan, those charcoal, blue, black, purple-looking people, they call them untouchables.
Yeah, they do.
Right? But again, M. Night Shyamalan and Glass. Glass is the character played by Samuel Jackson, who has this genetic deficiency of his bones being so brittle that barely touching him, he will break. Okay? At some future point, because his mother exposed him to comic books, he gets caught up in the mythos of the superhero character. In Unbreakable, what gets revealed by the end of the storyline, he becomes what is considered in storybook mythology the arch villain or the mastermind who creates the unbreakable superhero Bruce Willis by causing massive destruction and death. For example, Bruce Willis's character is the sole survivor of a horrific train wreck that kills almost 300 people. In the movie Glass, all three characters, and you have to also see the movie Split. If you saw it, I think it was last year, in 2017.
Split was deep, yeah.
Okay, that's a person with about, 2 dozen personalities, like a male Sybil. Back in the day, the movie Sybil. All right.
Right.
One of those characters referred to as the Beast, right?
Yep.
That becomes superhuman, strong, and violent and all that. But the point of the Beast character was to protect the little child called Kevin, who was the original personality that got splintered.
Yep.
One other character of his multiple identities was a perpetual 9-year-old. Okay, I don't want to get too far in that script, but I'm just saying he became the author of both characters, Rhonda. You know how the two were tied together? The father was one of the people killed on the train that created the unbreakable superhero.
Oh, wow.
And at the climax of, and I don't want to say it so I give it away because you really need to see it.
Yeah, and I'm going to see it.
I see him as the author, the black nobility of creating the superhero and the supervillain. And in one sense, you could almost say he was the big head scientist Yakub.
Damn. That's an excellent
Both the
analogy.
villain and the superhero is a Caucasoid European. But the mastermind is an African, more melanated, super intellect.
Yep.
Would that be King James, King Charles? I mean, I don't know. I just thought I'd share that with you for your consideration.
Excellent analogy. Excellent analogy.
And I yield.
Brother. Thank you for that, brother. Peace and love. Wow, that was excellent. Let me bring on 314, and then Brother Sean, I saw you sent me something on Indians not taxed, and we'll share that with the people. Let me bring on 314 because they've been holding for quite a bit. 314, your line is open.
Well, I was an employer, and the Indian employees that worked for me, they were taxed. So don't think that they don't get taxed. But somebody was talking about Texas. Texas was part of Mexico, and the people succeeded. That's what brought about the Mexican-American War, in which you had Zachary Taylor, Ulysses Grant and also Robert E. Lee fought together against Mexico, and they won. The United States was to sell it for $15 million to that country, but the country already owed the U.S., so it was one of those wash hand deals. And I hear people talk very extensively about this color of skin. Color of skin don't mean that you can't in the world. Just because a person's skin is not quote-unquote white, it means that they have an affemination for somebody who else has skin color that's similar to theirs. And that can merely be looked at by the wars that people of similar skin color wage with each other. You know that in those wars over in the continent of Africa, Africa got rid of its riffraff. That's how, and not in all cases, but in a lot of cases. And that's how a lot was put into this land here. You know, if you was warring against somebody, you was causing problems, raiding villages, stealing cattle, or killing somebody. If you was captured, you was required to pay restitution. And that restitution follows your lineage. You know, until it's settled, your kids take it on, their kids take it on. So when they were not able to capture, when they were not able to pay lineage, and this is one group over there in the Volta region of Ghana called the Amu, in a land that's called Osayumu. And they sold those, they didn't sell them, they just gave them away to traders, about 400 of them. And they ended up over here. Now, here's the thing, that debt still exists. So any person that is in the lineage of those that was expelled here, they ended up here, they still owe that debt technically. You know how Black Americans say that whites today owe for the things that their ancestors done to blacks then in the form of reparations? Well, that restitution still exists today. So, and you know, you talk about them wars and those Indian American wars. Actually, those was in the Maroons. Actually, they were slaves that had migrated down into Florida, right, during the Civil War. With the Seminoles. And when they left the plantations, because you had some accounts that was made by generals and say these are not Indians, these are slaves, these are blacks that we are fighting.
Okay, so who were the blacks? Who were the blacks?
Oh, they were slaves. They were the slaves that ran off from the plantations during that time.
Where did they come
during
from?
The time of Civil. Well, they came from Africa.
Okay, so how many slaves do you estimate came from Africa?
Well, I can't estimate because I don't know. There are ships manifest. There used to be a publication that came out of New York, and I've got a copy of it. I'm not here today. And they list all the ships, and they did have manifests off the ships. Now, here's another thing, too.
I would love to see that. So if you have a copy of that, if you could send it to the Truth Uncompromised Facebook page. And I'm asking that because I've been looking for years. I even went to the Library of Congress. I can't find
this was a magazine that this lady, man, published.
Oh,
now, let me tell you something else. You had black entrepreneurship here in this country since 1600s on through 1865. And there was a lady by the name of Walker, and she wrote a book on it. This book is based on census. It's based on Lloyd's insurance claims, not insurance claims, but insurance records. And it lists the hundreds of businesses that blacks had. You had black women that had stagecoach businesses, businesses in mining, businesses in shipping.
From what time frame?
From 1600 on through 1865.
I
Blacks
thought they
also,
were slaves, though. How can slaves have businesses?
Blacks didn't have. You had black slave owners. Matter of fact, you had those landowners. Those landowners, when they sponsored Europeans to the country, for every one they sponsored, they got 50 acres of land for free. Now, here's another one. The slaveholders in the South, in the urban areas, were women. mulatto women, about 80-some-odd% of them. And they slaves was dark-skinned slaves. And this shows up in court records and also in the census. And the reason why, well, one of the reasons why, because they was manumissed by their white husbands when they died. So they kept the business going. It had a vested interest in it. And we're talking about anywhere from 10 to 30,000 around the South Carolina itself.
You mean of slaves?
Black slaves, what was basically designated, the masters was designated mulattoes. You remember the paper bag test?
Mm-hmm.
All right, now all this stuff, all that comes together. Because the mulatto was lighter than the paper bag. So how was they considered? Look at Phyllis Wheatley in her poem, Wash My Heart Whiter Than Snow, O Lord. Now, one other thing, too. Blacks in America are not, they can say they're Africans, but it depends. Because those tribal groups, those heads, those Omahenis, you could not go back to in the Akana society and become a paramount chief. Why? Because you mix. I ain't saying anyone in particular, but a lot of them are mixed. I tell you another thing, too. Back during what we call ancient Egypt, I hear blacks in America say we was ancient Egyptians. No, you were not. Because those heads of those dynasties was Cushites, and they was ethnocentric. Those was families. The same way you have these powerful families today in your Rothschilds, your Rockefellers, and your Oppenheimers. They don't let nobody. You ain't gonna. If you see a black man walking down the aisle with a Rothschild daughter on his arm, then you know something's getting ready to happen. In the same way,
or unless he's in the bloodline somewhere. But sorry, but I hear what you're saying. Yes.
And the same way it is in Ghana. The Ashanti Henny in the Ashanti tribe, Osei Tutu, those are families, and they picked the leaders of the bloodline. Now let me give you another example. In the Bible, it says, "Do not give your daughters to their sons, and do not give your sons to their daughters."
True.
That was within the culture of them Cushites. The Cushites was breakaways that became your Yahwehs, whose God was Yahweh. And during the time when the Assyrians was terrorizing and marching down on what we call today Jerusalem, it was led by Hezekiah. And I can tell you a Bible passage, which is partially right, until they start talking about the mice. It's 2 Kings 19:35, when you see where Shabiko and Taharka came to the rescue of their kissing kin, Cushites, that they called Yahwehs. The Assyrians, which came to become the Persians, which is today Iran.
Right.
Yep.
The Assyrians was led by Sennacherib. And real quick, if the Assyrians had won that battle and destroyed those Yahwehs, it wouldn't have been no Judaism. And if it hadn't have been a Judaism, it wouldn't have been a Christianity. If it wasn't a Christianity, it wouldn't have been an Islam.
Well, I can't argue with you on that, brother. I really can't.
So that's just the way history is. And, people are human beings. I hear folks say that Africans didn't do sacrifice. That's a damn lie. They did. They sacrificed, cut people's hearts out, gave their daughters off to strangers. Same thing here in the Americas with the Aztecs. The Aztecs killed like 80,000 in 4 days. They're on those pyramids they have on the top and rolled their bodies off the side. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's human life. Not only does it go on in human life, it go on in the insect world too. Ants have slaves. Think.
Very good point. Very good point. Well,
can I say this real quick? Always look at the other side of the coin because people too often only tell you one side of the coin, basically because that's all they've been taught. They don't have enough analytical skills to look at the other side of the coin. Who would have known that blacks was doing big business during 1600s through 1865?
Yes, sir.
And that's a fact.
Right.
All righty.
Absolutely.
They
Thank
hide
you so
And get that
much.
book. Yeah, get
hide
that book
that.
too.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, sir. Give me the name of it again, because I like to write stuff down when I'm researching. If you don't mind.
I tell you what, write my email down. I'll email you a lot of
You don't.
the name of that book.
Too.
I don't
Are
care.
you okay giving it out? Okay, I didn't want you to get that out over air.
It's L as in Larry, C as in Charlie, Steel like the metal, STEEL, at Mindspring. Mind in your head, spring on a car, MINDSPRING.com. And I'll send you the title of those books. And really, like the one book called Slaves and Slave Ships, it's not it's in a journals. And what are journals? Journals is what people see and they write it down.
Right. Okay, well, I truly appreciate it.
All righty, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you
Bye-bye.
so much. Peace and love.
Peace and love.
All right then. Let me see. Okay, so we're gonna go into Dublin. All right. Sorry, y'all. I had to bring up my little notes because I do want to talk about, because we left off talking about how the quote Black Irishmen were slaughtered and start being deported over to the Americas, and more prominently Jamaica and Barbados. Hundreds and thousands were imported here. Okay, so what I found interesting, and folks may know this, but I didn't know this, Dublin, which a lot of the American cities, well, I know of a couple of American cities, have something called a county or cities named Dublin. So Dublin means black in Irish. And I am on the Negro Question Part 4, The Missing Link by Lee Cummings. I'm on page 41. So the author is, and he has a bunch of pictures in here that he directly got from the Irish Library, and it's depicting the 1641 Irish Rebellion. And in these particular pictures, you're going to see melanated people that are being slaughtered. And then in some of the pictures, you'll see where they were painting out the melanated side, but they missed the spot. Like they'll have an arm that they missed. Okay? So he says, the word Dublin means black in Irish. You can see that the king and the priest are depicted as black men. In Chicago, we use the word dub to refer to a $20 bill, Ebonics, and fin, F-I-N-N, to refer to a $5 bill. A fin in Irish was a white Gentile, and a dub was a black Gentile. I never knew that these were Irish words until I began to do research for this book. The language of these people live on in the ghettos of today. Okay. All right. So I just wanted to point that important point out also of some of the origins of these particular words. So now we know what Dublin means, just like we broke down the etymology of what Britain really means. All right. So that's actually an excellent point that Brother 314 came in on, because I also wanted to bring in this whole African narrative versus indigenous to the land Americans. And this man's name is, what the heck is the man's name? I thought I had his name. My bad. The video is called African and Negroes Are Not the Same People. And this is the YouTube channel, Truth is a Bitter Pill. So this man is out of Britain. So he's going to kind of break down the lineage of Africans and Negroes, and he's also going to break down the black nobility as well. So let me find this video. Then want to share this with the family, and it ties in to what Brother 314 was talking about. Sorry, y'all. Sometimes it takes me. I hate it when I. I
wonder how people think that blacks just came right out of slavery and started owning it.
It just doesn't make sense to me. You don't have two nickels to rub together, as Grandma and them used to say.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just not logical.
No, I used to think about my family. How did they get all that land? I mean, if you were slaves, that happened. You weren't supposed to have land according to the laws of this land. So that's something. You're right, Brother Kim.
Right, because it was a combination of things. Bottom line, there were more indigenous people of melanated hue that were the indigenous.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe that they were cutting deals with Europe to do commerce, okay? Because the first slaves, the Slavs, were actually the first ones documented on the land. I mean, this is the hidden information anyway, are Caucasian folks from Europe.
Right.
Okay, so that means that someone had to be over them that they were indentured servants to. And, the story is they were indentured servants, so meaning they owed somebody something, or they were serving some type of prison term or whatever, okay? So it was a combination of things. You had the indigenous people that did not go along or was not in the position to have the power to own slaves or whatever. And then you had the indigenous melanated blacks that were owning slaves and doing commerce with the European. And then in addition to that, you had intermarrying. Now, I have to say, when I was going back looking at those census records, I saw mulatto and Indian interchangeably. So meaning, 1 year you'll show up on the census, or your ancestors will show up on the census. The older the census is, they'll show up as Indian. And then the next census, or maybe a couple of census after that, sometimes they'll show up as white. Okay, so I do have to say that mulatto is that's sketchy to really think that when they say mulatto, that meant that they were mixed with white, because they used mulatto as Indian as well, because again, copper colored people mean just that, of all shades. And so it was said that when folks were coming in to do census, that they would look at a family, and we all know this in melanated folks' family. You can have someone that can pass the paper brown test, okay, and then others that can't. So depending on how they felt, they would list one family member as mulatto, one family member as Negro. But now I can only go by what I saw in my family lineage. Not one place did it say African. And I did all of my sides. Now I'm just sharing my personal experience. But yet, when I went to look at property records in different states, you, as a property owner, you had to list property to pay taxes. And a part of that property was slaves. So they clearly listed whether someone was African or not in those particular records. Okay, so now I can only go by what I saw in the records. So to me, the term African has been really heavily thrown around, and it has not been proven. So that's why I'm really going to be interested to see this ship manifest that the brother has on Africans coming over here, because the ones that I found, it was only a handful of people on the ship, and one of the ships got stopped, and they had to go back because they were not supposed to be importing any Africans onto the land. So
I think that was when the Britons were boycotting the slave traders that was bringing them in, and they were shooting at them and stuff. Is that time you were talking about?
Well, I don't know that. I'm just saying what I saw in the National Archive records, because I went and looked at the slave ship manifest, and one of them said that it got stopped, and they turned them around because they weren't supposed to be importing slaves, because and actually we're going to talk about that passage where
what's that ship they have starts with an A, something they were talking, it was a movie. Amistad. Yeah, that was when they had to throw them overboard and all that kind of stuff. When the Brits started patrolling against the slavers that were trying to bring more into this country.
Oh, over to the Americans or over to
To
Britain?
America.
Okay.
Over to America.
Okay. Yeah, and one of them, who was that? Was that Ben Franklin, Brother Sean? I have the passage, and we're going to discuss it, where he actually complained and said he didn't want any Africans being imported on this land because he already had enough swarthy black folks and red people here. So interesting stuff. So before I play this video, I did want to bring up the Indians Not Taxed. Now this is coming from Indian Country Today, Vicente, Indians Not Taxed. This is April 8, 2003. Americans have never really understood Native Americans. A Native person to many Americans is a composite of race-based misconceptions and icons. Their most recent misconception is that we are all getting rich from casino money. One of the older ones, however, is that we don't pay taxes. This latter misconception has an explainable source, though. The British colonists who eventually revolted had a Protestant notion about us, that we weren't really human beings. They had occasionally encountered Indians who had abandoned their tribal ways. As they began to craft an American political system, they tied the numbers of congressional representatives for each state to the number of people who lived within the state's boundaries. In a concession to the Old South, whose white populations were sparse. Now, I'm going to read that again because that's telling. We keep saying that, but folks keep thinking it's the opposite. In a concession to the Old South, whose population were sparse, the northern states agreed to let slaves be counted as 3/5 of a person, even though they couldn't vote. And they added into the newly drafted text that any count could not include Indians not taxed. These three words actually stood for a cultural recognition of 1787. There were two types of Indians living in American colonial societies: those who were taxed and those who were not. Those Indians who were taxed had abandoned altogether their tribal ways. They broke their connection to their tribal relatives. They dressed in the white way. Indians were not taxed continued to maintain the Indians who were not taxed continued to maintain their ties to tribe and tradition. America had no expectation or intention to tax these kinds of Indians. Native people went without taxation for many decades after these words were scribed within the Constitution. Those who choose white society, however, found themselves obliged to pay taxes. But no Indian, taxed or untaxed, was a citizen of the United States. That changed in 1924. The United States made all Indians into citizens of the United States. Some Native people rejoiced, but the U.S. had no constitutional authority to annex our souls. There was no consent given on our part to join the federal union. Within 10 short years, we were deemed by the U.S. Supreme Court to be obliged to yield to the inevitable U.S. domination and taxes. But let's do some math. By the last U.S. Census, Native Americans numbered around 2.725 million. I find that number interesting, don't y'all? Everyone considered that number to be an undercount, estimating that 1/3 of that number pays taxes as adults and giving a random $2,000 per person in taxes means that Indians pay $1.8 billion each year. Certainly, the figure is probably much higher. And that doesn't account for state income taxation, sales tax, and other forms of federal and state taxes. What may be most troubling about taxation of Native people is not the heavy-handed manipulation of questionable legal principles, but rather the impropriety of exacting ransom from people who are regularly considered to be the most destitute in American society. We lost the American continent at the barrel of a gun. In so doing, we created a real estate market that supports a significant portion of the American economy. One might say we've already made our perpetual contribution. The courts devised a conceptual compensation for these losses in the form of trust responsibility. The trust is best exemplified by the BIA budget. And that's the Bureau of Indian Authorities, I think, or might be Affairs. Affairs, yeah. Bureau of Indian Affairs budget, which this year measures at $2.34 billion. And the figure for income tax paid by natives is even close to correct. We are paying 77% of the trust responsibility. So why are we financing the trust responsibility? Some would argue that it constitutes our share of the cost of the American infrastructure. They running the same game on everybody. It's roads, it's schools, it's economy. But these things we did not ask for, and surely in many respects have had little control over. This BIA budget shrinks annually as if the American public owes us less and less for the immense land base and the manner in which it contributes to a stable economy. America would like to dispense with every sense of guilt. To them, the trust responsibility is a reminder. A better way to dispense with guilt, however, would be to honor the trust and in the long run to avoid forcing the Indian world to finance its own birthright. Issues of taxation, I know, right, sis? Issues of taxation were enough to fuel the American Revolution, and that should give us hesitation to think. There are always darker sides to legal and moral inequalities. Thousands of Native people, indeed, do not pay taxes. They live in the shadow economy, fighting poverty with the tools of barter, cash, and anonymity. These are Indian people who trade cattle, sheep, firewood, cedar posts, and jewelry for services and cash. Cash goes unreported. Thousands more fail to file income tax returns. Our traditional survival mentality prompts us to hide as criminals for our failure to address this tax dilemma. Finding ways to avoid detection using silence and exile, as we have for decades, against the controlling pathology of the white man, now disguised as the IRS. Is it any wonder that we feel we have to hide that we have our own evasive pathology? This is no way for Indian people to have to live. Since 1924, we have put up docile resistance to taxation. Granted, we occasionally challenge one state tax or another. By our silence in the face of federal tax coercion regime, though, we have surrendered the legal principles embodied in the original understanding of Indians not taxed clause. The American colonists never contemplated our inclusion in the political entity they were creating. Now I'm going to read that again because that's really, really important. And folks are missing that point. The American colonists never contemplated our inclusion in the political entity they were creating. The Congress of 1924 was motivated by an imperfect notion of social engineering that departed wholly from the foundational understanding of the Congress of 1787 and muddied the legal waters. Professor Frank Pomersheim has designated Supreme Court decisions that ignore the fair meaning of the U.S. Constitution as extra-constitutional. That is just a bit too kind and perhaps serves to legitimize these kinds of decisions. The open use of the word unconstitutional might better highlight that these decisions are unjust. Native people may associate taxes with citizenship and thus may feel squeamish that their tribal membership may provide them with their only source of political identity. But the struggle to protect tribal sovereignty does, at times, come down to the behavior and attitudes of individual Indians. Okay, so now I'm going to read this again. Although this native, not implying to indigenous, but he's hitting on a good point here. Native people may associate taxes with citizenship and thus may feel squeamish that their tribal membership may provide them with their only source of political identity. But the struggle to protect tribal sovereignty does, at times, come down to the behavior and attitude of individual Indians. Tribal sovereignty means little if we cannot call for principal understanding about the lines that exist between the U.S. and our tribal people. Certainly, an honest jurisprudence might force the Supreme Court to question the legal basis for Indian Citizenship Act of 1924 and otherwise might end the taxation of Native people. In the process, our sense of propriety might get scrambled. But obviously, in these are times when when what is just or right is at issue. A refined conscience is most needed by us all. Judge Carey and Vicente, a member of the Jacarilla Apache Nation of Northwest New Mexico, currently serves as assistant professor of sociology at Fort Lewis College in Durango, Colorado. He sits as judicial official for several American Indian nations and is a columnist for Indian Country Today. Okay, so thank you for that, Brother Sean, because I'm shocked that they are dancing between having jurisdiction, letting the U.S. court have jurisdiction over them. So it would make sense. It would make sense why they're getting taxed.
Registered voters.
Oh, well. Yeah, that's interesting. That's eye-opening. That's very eye-opening.
When you register to vote, you give up your rights and to your trust in whatever you have. That's this dude on taxes once said, every American has signed over themselves and their property to pay the bills of this country. And we tried to figure out, now, how did that happen? And that young man came on the show, and he showed it to us. It was in the tax laws. I mean, in the voting registration laws of California. When you vote and you register to vote, that's how you do it. You give your rights over, your tribal rights, your trust, your everything over to vote.
Well, I guess, I'm sorry, go ahead, sis.
The
go ahead.
The 14th Amendment is a trick. This country is still run by Great Britain and the Pope.
Yes.
This country did not get independence from Great Britain, like they said, because they have pictures of the British soldiers still leaving with their guns after the so-called War of Independence. You usually don't let your folks leave with their guns when you defeat them because you don't want them to come back on you. So I was reading David Robinson's book, and it shows that this country is still under British rule. And people think otherwise. I'm sorry. I was going to just...
No. I didn't want to cut you off. No, you're good. You're good. I just didn't want to cut you off. And not to mention that there were deals done on how business was to be conducted. And so the U.S. still kicks back up to the crown, and then because I think the IMF is ultimately the holder of those particular accounts. And then exactly. And then the Vatican supposedly and allegedly owns it all. So that's a good point. But I guess what stood out to me additionally in this article is that, again, people keep getting themselves tripped up because this native person admits that indigenous people were never considered to be a part of their U.S. constitutional corporate system. Okay. So
it's a line.
Huh?
It's a line
No,
in
no,
the
no.
It's a line in the Constitution. Indians are not considered citizens. They're not. It's on the Constitution. I think it's almost the first paragraph or so. They called them riffraff and all kinds of stuff. And then the Africans that they brought here were not considered citizens either, and never could be, nor their descendants.
Yeah,
It says
that's yes.
Constitution. That's
Absolutely.
why he did that.
Absolutely. But, they wanted to participate in their systems, and they never said anything where they put statues on them to become citizens. So now it's a big old jumbled mess. So very good article, Brother Sean. Very good article. Okay. All right, family. So I want to share with you this video. It's called African and Negroes Are Not the Same People. And it's off a YouTube video called Truth is a Bitter Pill. So I'm going to play part one. It's about 14 minutes, and then we're going to come back and chop it up. So here we go.
The last point I'm going to make on this is that Africans and Negroes are two different peoples. Race and skin color are really a red herring. Okay, it's a kind of divisive lie that has been put about, and I'm going to go into this a bit more in detail. To separate people by perceived race is a distraction. Okay, so we all think that all black people are the same, basically, but they're not. Africans and Negroes are different. They have a different skeletal structure, different skull shape, and one interesting thing is African people, real Africans, cannot grow hair like Negroes can. So African men cannot grow beards. All right? African women cannot grow afros. Right? It's a very powerful thing. If you see real African women, you'll see that they've always got very, very short hair because they can't grow it. Very quickly, Adam was not the very first man. The Bible is only covering a period of time which is about 7,000 years, the last 7,000 years of Earth's history. It doesn't cover before that period. There were people before that period, and the first verses of the Bible actually tell you that if you read it properly and you read it with the translating the Paleo-Hebrew. Some of the words aren't translated quite correctly, and gives you the impression that it's all happening contemporaneously, but it's not. It's actually there's like a gap period in between the first two verses. So the biblical Israelites were black. It says that Ham, this is according to the Zondervan Bible Dictionary, Ham was the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes, they're separate people, but the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, Canaanites. So it's telling you there that, again, the Egyptians and what became the Africans were black people. So going through the Bible, I'm not going to go through all of these, but Joseph in the Bible was so much like an Egyptian that his own brothers didn't recognize him. So obviously he looked like an Egyptian, so the Israelites were black people. Moses was also an Israelite, but he was raised under the nose of Pharaoh, so he'd kind of stand out if he was a white guy. And he was also mistaken as an Egyptian by the daughters of the priest of Midian. And also Moses' sister, Miriam, was turned white as a punishment. So there's a lot more biblical references that tell you that the Israelites were actually black people. But yeah, you can like go through it in the Bible. And throughout the what's called the Renaissance period, all of the artwork was replaced throughout Europe. But because Russia, well, it was a kind of insular society at that time, Renaissance didn't get to Russia. So you can go online and search for Russian icons, and you'll find that everybody who was portrayed in the Bible were portrayed black. And yeah, after Renaissance, all that artwork was destroyed and replaced with whitenized versions. But 500 years ago, prior to 500 years ago, this is how they were always depicted. And the last thing is that this man is the ex-president of Egypt, and he was quoted on television to say, "We can't accept the Jews because they left here black but came back white." So, and he literally said that on television. And yeah, he was murdered not long after that. So yeah, in Psalms it tells you that that all the nations were going to come against these people, and they were going to make sure that their name would be forgotten, and they would forget who they are, and that's what's happened. And all these nations are confederate against them. These are all the nations that Esau mixed with. Because Esau felt cheated of his birthright, yeah, the ancestral hatred has remained, yeah, even though he's been spread out across all these different nations. So when the Europeans came to get slaves, not a single African went into slavery. What happened was the slavers came for the Judeans, the Negroes, and it was the Africans who actually sold them into slavery. It was the Arabs and the Africans who sold them into slavery. Right? They didn't sell themselves into slavery. It was the Africans were selling the outsiders, the ones who came in and were actually prospering in the wilderness of their land. So so that dispels that myth that Africans were selling each other into slavery. So on a similar note, who were the Spartans? In one of the books that were left out of the Bible, the Maccabees, it tells you that the Spartans were brethren of the Jews there, the Judites there. There's a letter to the Lacedaemonians, as they were called, saying, "Look, we're brothers. Let's make a pact. Let's join together." So it tells you right there that the Spartans were actually black people as well. So that film should have had Denzel Washington playing the guy. So yeah. So, and who were the Trojans? Well, this was quite amazing for me, because I just happened to be reading the Iliad at one point, and I was researching this, and as I was looking at the genealogy chart in the 1611 Bible, the names started to match up with what I was reading in the Iliad. So one of the sons, the great-great-grandsons of Judah, was a guy called Dada. And again, it's in the Iliad that Dada, or Dardanus, was the father of Erichthonius, who was the father of King Tros, who founded Troy. So again, the Israelites were the Trojans. So the Trojans were black too. Slaves also came from Europe, and this is the evidence of it. Obviously, evidence of this kind is kind of scant. You can't find very much around, but every now and again you find some bit of writing that gives you clues. This is from Benjamin Franklin, 1751, and he says, "Why should Pennsylvania, founded by the English, become a colony of aliens who will shortly be so numerous as to Germanize us instead of us Anglifying them, and will never adopt our language or customs any more than they can acquire our complexion?" Okay, saying that they were black people. Says, which leads me to add one remark. The number of purely white people in the world is proportionally very small. All of Africa is black or tawny, brown. Asia, chiefly tawny. America, exclusive of the newcomers, wholly so. And in Europe, the Spaniards, Italians, French, Russians and Swedes are generally of what we call a swarthy complexion. Swarthy means black. As are the Germans also. Okay, so he underlines the point, why increase the sons of Africa by planting them in America? So literally the Germans and most Europeans at that time, 1751, were black people. Yeah, history has been rewritten. So this is one of the journeys of the people from the what's known as the Holy Land, from Israel right now. These are the people called the Iba. Again, very similar to the Ibo and the Igbo tribes in Africa, because Iba comes from the patriarch Eba, who was where the name Hebrew comes from. Okay, so the Iba travelled across southern Europe and ended up in a place they named after themselves, the Iberian Peninsula. And when they were chased out of that area by the barbarians, they founded another country called Hibernia. Again, they named it after themselves. Hibernia means land of the Hebrews. And some of them went on to colonise another country, Scotland. And the only name that survives is Hebrides. Okay. So the Irish were originally black people, and this is an illustration from a magazine, Harper's Weekly, from the 1800s, and it actually tells you in there, if I'd left the whole thing, it says the Iberians were believed to originally be an African race, okay, and you can see how the Irish Iberians started off like this, mixed with these, and became, this was kind of a sort of midway transitional stage. But if you look at the Iberian writing of the time, it's almost exactly the same as the Paleo-Hebrew script, right, saying that these guys came from Jerusalem, basically. Britain actually started through a black Hebrew Israelite who was a Trojan prince. Okay, his name was Brito. It's been anglicised to Brutus. And what happened was, after the fall of Troy, he set out with 300 ships off to find a mythical land in the west. Okay, it's not written there, but he actually he landed in France at one point. He sailed up a French river and started fighting the French, the pre-French, I guess. And him and his men basically fought their way all the way into the interior of France, and realised that they were kind of cut off. His men were all kind of stuck in the middle of France, surrounded by their enemies, and thought, well, we're not going to do very much here, so let's leave. But obviously their mark is still there, Brittany. Yeah, in the past. Places got named after the people that were there. So Brittany, Bretagne, is a mark that this man was there. What happened was Brutus, Brito, landed in 1103 BC in Totnes, of all places. Yeah. Well, we're getting to that. Yeah. So when he landed here, he found that the country was overrun with red-headed giants. And the king of the giants was called Albion, and that's, again, places were named after the people. So the country was called Albion. So essentially, Brito and his men killed all the giants apart from one, Albion's brother, called Gog-Magog. He left Gog-Magog alive because one of Brito's men, Quirinius, wanted to fight this 18-foot giant. Right, so The giant was kind of nursed back to health. He had to be nursed back to health so he could fight Quirinius. And this epic battle occurred on Plymouth Hoe. And what happened was Quirinius ended up throwing Gog Magog over the cliff onto the rocks. And the place was called Lam Go Mago, which means Giant's Leap. Okay, but now it's called Plymouth Hoe. So Britannia, or Britannia, was named after Brito or Brutus. Brito in Hebrew is basically something like holder of the covenant. Okay, Britannia means land of the covenant. This is the covenant between Abraham and the Most High. Okay, the Creator, specified in the Bible. When Brutus founded his capital city, he called it Troyanova, New Troy. Okay, there's a tribe near London called Trinovantes, which is telling you that these people lived near New Troy. And yeah, the Romans renamed it Londinium. So Brutus was part of the royal family. He descended from Judah. He's part of the real royal family. You know, the real royal family is descendant of King David. So he's a direct descendant of King David, part of the Zara side of the family.
Not Pharaohs.
Sorry? Not Pharaohs, no.
Pharaohs was the one that got the inheritance.
Yeah, but still, Zara was part of the royal bloodline.
No, but he was born second.
I know, but yeah, but the
royal line.
he's still part of the royal line of Judah.
Okay. So that was part one of it's called Africans and Negro Are Not the Same People, and the YouTube channel is called Truth is a Bitter Pill. So I'll pause in case Sister Brother Sean, you want to put something on it before I go to part two, which is just 7 minutes. But go ahead, because he put a lot in there. I think he did a good job, but go ahead, Brother Sean.
I mean, for one, as people keep hearing it being told, melanated people were here first. It's all ours. But everybody keep trying to claim America. Everybody want to be in America. Everybody claim they trying to avoid one world government instead of the other. But y'all think we all the same. Ain't that a one world? A one world government?
Yeah, it is.
I mean, obviously with all these things that are being told to y'all about the different tribes, the different cultures, even though we were all melanated, we always doing different shit.
Mm-hmm.
We were different people. We ain't all the same. But now everybody want to be lumped up and clumped up into one thing. The point that I'm getting to is all of these identities and other people that y'all have come to hate, these are actually your ancestors and your people that you hate. And y'all get mad at us for knowing who the fuck our ancestors are.
Right.
Y'all got land that y'all need to go fight for instead of fighting to come here or all the confusion that y'all causing here. People keep laying it out for y'all. Find out who you are. Find out who your people are. Follow that all the way back to that land, and you know who you got your gripe with. We got no shit going on over here. I mean, come on, cut us a break. Go over there and get your shit. Plenty of shit to do over there. You done came here and learned how to plant, grow food. I mean, we been taught the world everything. Now y'all done came here again and learned. Go back and apply that shit. Become wise. Go apply that shit. Get up out of here.
Exactly. And it's interesting, just like Brother 313 said, that, even in those African kingdoms, they know who their people are. And so, if you're going to put a claim that you are of a certain lineage, then you would have to prove it. Because they're just not going to be issuing out benefits just to be issuing them out. Now, according to 313, if you were sent over here, then it may be some type of perpetual debt that is on your family lineage. So, my point, to just kind of add on to what Brother Sean is saying, this stuff is really simple. It's no need for somebody to be arguing with somebody else about who they are. Do your own research. We're trying to lay out to you all that indigenous folks of dark melanated skin, copper color skin, so whether that be the blue, black, all the way up to the paper bag test, to the lighter than the paper bag test, are the range of colors of melanated folks across the planet. And so we're trying to lay out to you that be from Asia. We haven't gotten to Asia yet. We gonna get to it. Your folk can be from Asia or Eurasia, Europe, the Americas, or Africa. So you cannot just tell who you are just based on what somebody else say. You are supposed to be doing the research on your lineage. And it starts with talking with folks with your family and getting into those census records. Okay? Because me personally, I don't argue with people and tell them who they are. That's not my MF in business. Because I don't know who you are just by looking at you. Now, I take that back. Some Africans, you can kind of tell. You can look at the genome. But even in that case, we had reverse migration. But nonetheless, it is each person's responsibility. And now is the time for you to be doing it as this immigration keeps coming up here in the Americas. They're doing that for a purpose. So it is extremely important for you to know who you are. So very good point. Very good point. Sis, did you have something that you wanted to put on it?
Well, I realized as he was speaking in the beginning, he was quoting Dr. Rudolph from Babylon to Timbuktu, who wrote that heritage in that. He was quoting about, were they the Hebrew and all that kind of stuff, those people. He also said something was really, only a woman would catch this, is that the African women cannot grow hair, and neither can the men. And I thought, really? He said their hair is always short. I guess that's one of their phenotypes that they have or something that tells the difference about them. I said, wow. And I started thinking about all the Africans that I've seen. And he said something about they can't even have naturals. They don't even have naturals or something. And I said, huh? Really? But their hair is real short because they can grow it, and that's one of their phenotypes. I don't know how true that is. But that was an interesting comment that he made.
Yeah, that was. I found that interesting too when I first listened to it. So yeah. Yep. Okay, so I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother.
If you think about it in a way, I mean, how many heavily bearded African men do you see, and
none?
How many African quote-unquote African women do you see rocking afros or this, that, or the other? I mean, everybody can throw in extensions and put on wigs to make their hair look longer.
Most of them are bald-headed.
Or they wear it really short. Or they wear it really short.
Wow.
But that again just goes to show you that there are differences in us as people, period. And why everybody keep trying to be all the same or one thing. Mama didn't create this one flower. Mama didn't create this one tree. I mean, you about to take lions, for instance. They all know that they're lions, but just because you're a lion don't mean you get to come over here and chill at my pride. You ain't down with me. You ain't my bloodline. You ain't supposed to be nowhere in this area where I didn't piss that, nigga. I don't give a fuck if we lions. You ain't my people, though. I don't fuck with you like that. You want to come kill me and take all my broads. That ain't cool. I don't care if we the same people. You trying to take from me. And I got a natural right to defend myself and defend my territory. This is why I eat at, this is why I sleep at, this is why I do my thing. This is me. And you want to be all up in my personal space.
Agreed. So, yeah, I just find it really fascinating that, you know, indigenous people across the planet, and I, you know what, I'll take that back. I can't put it across the planet. I apologize across the planet. Please accept my apology. It's really here in the Americas that type of fuckery goes on folks imposing titles on other people and then trying to tell you who your bloodline is based on some information that they didn't get from somebody else and have not done complete research beyond what was taught to them in school. And then what's even more insulting, they haven't even researched their own bloodline. So there's really no need for the foolishness. Start with self. Know who you are. I cannot tell you how many people get an attitude when you say, well, no, you know, that's not, you know, my family doesn't trace back to Africa. Oh, you don't want to be. Look, I'm not trying to hear that fuck shit you talking. I'm telling you where my people don't come from, and I have the proof. Well, I'm from Africa. Okay, then. So then you prove to me you from Africa. What part of Africa? Well, blah, blah, blah. Oh, okay, then. So what tribe? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what year and what ship did your people come on? Cricket. Oh, okay, then. Okay. So these are the things that folks that have done their personal research and have proof have an attitude when titles are forced upon them by others. Well, you a Moor. No, I'm not a motherfucking Moor. That's not what my grandmother said. We don't know nothing about no Moors. Now, that's not downing anybody that claims that particular title and lineage. That is your right. But folks need to stop with the fuckery. If you believe that you are African or that you are Moorish or that you are a Smurf or that you are an Anunnaki or that you are a Jew, that is your business and your right. Be comfortable and be happy with who you say you are and leave other folk alone. Because otherwise, to me, you're not really really sure who you are. So you trying to impose on everybody else to justify your decision of a selection. So, that's just my little rant and 2 cents. So we're going to go into the last part, and it's only 7 minutes. Again, because I chopped up this video, I didn't get it all. Africans and Negro are not the same people. And it's off the YouTube channel, Truth is a Bitter Pill. Okay, so let me play part 2. Here we go.
But Pharaohs had the birthright, yeah. But you'll see what happens is they connect together in the end in the bloodline. So yeah, the proof of this is in 4th Street in Totnes. You can go right in the street. There's the Brutus Stone, which is where he's said to have set foot in Totnes. Also in London, the Church of St Swithin, there's a stone which Brutus brought from Troy, and again you can go to that church and see it. And I already mentioned about the Trinovantes. Also, this is a tapestry showing the epic battle between Quirinius and the red-haired giant at Plymouth Hoe. So Quirinius, after his epic battle, he was given Cornwall, and that's Cornwall was actually named after Quirinius. And yeah, there were up until I think it was 1486. There were chalk drawings of 2 giants, or 1 giant and a smaller man. This was commemorating Quirinius and Gog Magog. And right here, there's a news story saying that they want to recreate the chalk drawings on Plymouth Hoe. So, and also in the Lord Mayor's Parade in London, they parade 2 giants, Gog and Magog. It's just a corruption of Gog, Magog and Quirinius. So, as I said, Britain, or British, means land of the covenant. It's a Hebrew word. And as I said, it's a covenant between the Hebrews and the Creator. So, are we keeping the covenant? Just a quick word about the Anglo-Saxons. The word Saxon actually means sons of Isaac. Okay, the Anglo-Saxons means the angelic sons of Isaac. The angelic sons, and there's been some confusion about this, the angelic sons are the ones that exhibited the fallen angel seed. So the original Saxons were dark-skinned, and the Anglo-Saxons were lighter-skinned. And I didn't actually mention this when I was talking about Greece, but this is the modus operandi of this bloodline. Okay, what they would do is, when there was a population they wanted to conquer, they would infiltrate this population. They would sort of arrive in few numbers, and then some more and a few more, until they had enough power, and they would take over that population, become those people, and rewrite history so you don't know about those people. Okay? And the same thing happened in Germany, Saxony. There was the original Saxons, and then this bloodline came in, took over, and they became the Anglo-Saxons. So it kind of brings us to King James the sixth and the first. He was a black man. Okay. Now you can go to the National Portrait Gallery and you'll see a white guy looking back at you, but those portraits were basically repainted. Okay, what couldn't be painted over were engravings, and in the 1611 Bible there's an engraving of a black man. He was actually again an Israelite of the royal house of Judah, descended from the Pharaoh's line. Okay, that what came in through France. Sorry, yeah, got that. Told you. So he was the one who had the Bible translated as faithfully as possible at the time, because it says in the foreword, actually, that there were people, and he meant the Roman Catholic Church, who wanted to destroy the word of the Most High. And he didn't want that to happen, so that's why he had the Bible translated. He sat on the thrones of England, Scotland, Ireland, and France, actually, and he unified them into one kingdom. And I said, there's the bogus painting of James. He's been smeared with allegations of homosexuality and sleeping with his mother, but they're all baseless claims. Because how can you be homosexual and have 9 children with your wife? You have to have an awful lot of sex to get 9 children, I think. So yeah, more pictures, engravings of him. And there's an engraving of James and his wife Anne of Denmark with a afro. Yeah. So he reunited the tribes of Israel in England. Right? The Union Jack means the reunification of Jacob. Okay, that's why under the throne, the coronation throne, is the stone of Scone, which is the stone of destiny, the stone of Jacob, the stone that Jacob rested his head on when he wrestled with an wrestled with an angel. Same thing, really. So yeah, that's why that stone is there, because this country is the New Jerusalem. I probably wondered why that song Jerusalem comes from. Guy Fawkes was actually an agent of the Roman Catholic Church, and he wasn't about trying to get rid of Parliament. He was trying to assassinate James. Yeah, because the Roman Catholic Church wanted to stop the Bible being translated. Probably, but the main aim was to kill James. So this is James' grandson, Charles II. Okay, there's also a white-niced version of him, but one painting did survive, and it matches up with again an engraving of Charles II, and he was the last of the Stuart line. And what happened was the Roman Catholic Church, or let's put it the Ashkenazi bloodline, basically finally succeeded in removing this royal line off the throne, and they replaced it with an Ashkenazi German bloodline. So, what happened to the black peoples of the British Isles? Well, if you look closely at, I just want to draw your attention to one of the definitions of Negro, number 3. Any person with some Negro ancestors. Okay, just keep that in mind.
Okay, family. So again, I would encourage you to, you could go back and listen to that video in its entirety. Africans and Negroes are not the same people, and that's from the YouTube channel Truth is the Bitter Pill. The particular speaker, he is a melanated man from the UK, and believe it or not, his entire audience were Caucasian Brits. So I found that really interesting that they were sitting and taking in all of that information. And it really just proves my point that how in the Americas, we are not, for the most part, as a collective, folks are not doing the research or seeking out this knowledge. They're just taking face value what is being taught to them in the schools, which is grossly inaccurate. All right. And And 727, I saw you in the queue, but it was after we had started the video. So if you want to get back in the queue, just press *1 and I'll come right to you. Sorry about that. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to touch on, just to show you how vast the deportation happened over in Europe to the Americas, and now I'm still on the Negro Question Part 4, The Missing Link by Lee Cummings. I'm on page 43, and it goes, in the 17th century, 500,000 Huguenots had been deported from France and were given asylum in Wales, Scotland, and Ireland, and the Electorate of Palestine by King Charles II. The French were originally a black nation, but after the white English had taken over the country, they either deported or forced a black Frenchman to leave. History states that while they slept, ships were waiting in the harbor to take them to Scotland, Ireland, Wales, and Palinate Electorate. I don't know what that is. Palinate Electorate. Why am I mentioning these people? Because they jumped out of the frying pan right into the fire. Once they got off the ships, they were sold into the American colonies. These were the people who Boyd Dawkins described as being the Basque, small, long-haired, dark men who inhabited all of Europe before the arrival of the English. Okay, so did y'all catch that? So the Basque people, Basque, were the indigenous before the arrival of the English. The captives from Wales with the Huguenots ended up in Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Idaho, Tennessee, Ohio, Rhode Island, and the slave plantations of the American South. This is a matter of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Think about this for one moment. When the slave ship left London's market, it already was loaded with captives, and once the ships made it to West Africa, it stopped in Judah, slave coast, and picked up more captives. Once the slave ships left the west coast of Africa, she continued on to the Middle Passage. From there, she pronounced the Americas. Okay. These ships were carrying two different groups of blacks. One group of captive came from Ireland, Britain, Wales, Scotland, and France. The other group came from West Africa. This is not conjecture or some writer trying to make a name for himself. These are the facts. These three kingdoms were plucked up by the roots and replanted in the Americas. Okay. All right. So now, bear with me. I have to go to my notes.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Brother Sean.
Well, to me, right off the bat, that eliminates everybody being from Africa.
You know, I'm not trying to start nothing. Sips water.
We didn't write none of that.
That's what it says. That's what it says.
And it was already people here, so I mean, you just had a planet full of darkies, and
right.
None of them spoke the same language or really had the same cultures. This, that, and other, till other cultures were imposed on them. So we definitely couldn't all be the same people. I mean, if you think about it, before the quote-unquote Anglo-Saxons came along,
Right.
King I Am had him a good thing going.
Yeah.
Catholic
Yeah,
Church
although it
came
was some drama for him to sit on that throne because his mother was murdered. And by the way, Brother 832, you had asked me when we started this series. I see you 727. I'm coming to you, baby. King James' mother is a steward.
Right.
She is a steward, so that is confirmed. And when we go look at them ship manifests, that steward name is going to become important. So let me go to 727 because you've been so patient. Hold on a second, y'all. 727, your line is open.
Hi. Good evening, family. This is Cheryl.
Oh, hey, sis. I haven't remembered your number yet. How are you?
Right. I am well, and I'm glad that you all are well. I won't take much of your time. I just wanted to add something to the sister mentioned about about having the right to travel earlier, the start of the program.
Yes.
We all have the right to travel by foot. The manufacturer's certificate of origin is transferred from the manufacturer of an automobile or motorcycle, etc., to the state. And you're required to have a license plate as proof that you've registered the vehicle in the state. You are, in fact, leasing the vehicle from the state, and you're paying for it. So when you're traveling in the state's vehicle, it's their property. Even though if you paid cash for it or you finished making your payments, you do not get that manufacturer's certificate of origin. You get what's called a certificate of title. And you can transfer that property and make the few dollars or whatever or get credit for it. But the state actually owns that vehicle. So when the po-po pulls you over and asks for registration and your driver's operator's license, which you have to be able to utilize their property, you have to comply with everything that all their requirements. And that's what they're not telling you when people are doing this paperwork about I have the right to travel, and they're riding around in the vehicles with not a state license plate but their own little paper that they put on and, arguing with the police. You are causing all of these problems for yourself. You don't own that vehicle ever.
Nope.
Unless you go into your garage or some facility and manufacture your own vehicle. So I just wanted to say that, you have the right to travel on your 2 feet.
That's good.
Which would explain why people keep getting locked up behind
That's so funny.
not having the driver's license.
Right. You have to have the driver's operator's license to use the vehicle. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the state.
That's right. The registration belongs to
Never is that manufacturer's certificate of origin given to an individual. The states keep it for life. And that's why you have to have registration. You have to go through inspection in some states. You have to have a motor vehicle operator's license, they call it in some places. Some places just driver's licenses. And they don't tell you that when people are caught up into that right to travel bullshit.
Yep.
That's true. They don't.
But I enjoy the show always. I won't keep you. It was in a few times.
Thank you for coming on here and stating that, because people getting locked up and they're not understanding why they're getting locked up.
Right.
So,
it's the same as when you think you're buying a home.
Yep.
You buy the structure on the land, but you never own the land, because that's why you pay property tax. So you can argue with these people all day long. You're in their vehicle, and as long as when they stop you and they ask for a driver's license and registration, you got to comply.
Yep, and insurance in some states now.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you have your God-given right to to travel on your own 2 feet. But unless you are the owner of the manufacturing company that's building that vehicle, you don't have it. And no piece of paper is going to give that to you. They haven't relinquished that yet.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense, because I think those VIN numbers, if I remember correctly, it is a systematic way to them. They know what state,
the year the vehicle was made, the manufacturer, all of that is in the vehicle identification number, right?
Yep, absolutely. So that makes sense what you're saying. That makes a lot of sense.
But when people get involved in that, they don't tell them that. They say, I'm indigenous to this land. That's true. And this is our land, and we should do whatever the hell we want to do. We should get out of their system. Don't use their vehicles. It's going to be hard because we become very comfortable being able to get from point A to point B, in a vehicle. But if we stop tomorrow, if we all decided we aren't going to use their vehicles, think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Things will stop.
Yep, they'll change that real quick.
Right. But we have to stop putting ourselves into their system.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as we're part of it, one way or another, we're going to have problems.
Right.
We're going to have these problems. But thank you for giving me the time. I enjoyed you all. As usual, I learned so much. Peace and love.
More, sis.
Okay. Peace and love, sis. Yeah, that's Sis Cheryl. She drops a lot of great knowledge on Facebook, and I've used a lot of her information. So I'm glad she called in and put something on it. I'm sorry. Go ahead, sis.
Well, I want to go back. I knew that the royals took down somebody, and they said after Charles II, which is King James's grandson. Then Nazim substituted themselves on the throne.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. You said who?
King James's grandson was Charles II.
Yes.
And then after him, they took him down or something, or he died or whatever. The Ashkenazi Jews substituted themselves on the throne of England.
Yep.
I'm like, because I knew it was after either King Henry. I thought it was King Henry the 8th after him, or the 6th, or something like that. And then they substituted, but it was Charles II.
Mhm. Yep, and I think I'm sorry. Go ahead, sis.
No. So I understand that a lot of the substitution. See, because Merkel, she's a Plantagenet, and she was before. Her grandfather was one of the Henrys, I think. I'm not sure, because they murdered somebody, one of the child kings or something, and that's how they lost the line. They murdered her grandfather, her great-grandfather or something. And now they're using her, unfortunately, to substitute themselves back in. Because they're not legitimate to the throne.
No.
But the thing with that is, with melanated people, on the whole, trying to claim and be something that they're not.
They're not. Exactly.
Seeking citizenship and membership interested when these people are ruling by bloodline. They get us to think about being members of this or members of that or something, that or the other on a whole. and not be specific about our bloodline.
Yep.
What you're entitled to is through your bloodline, not your nationality.
Exactly. Do you mind saying that again, Brother Sean? Because that is so very, very important what you just said.
What you are entitled to through your bloodline, not your nationality.
Exactly.
So her baby would be entitled to the throne through the bloodline of her if they go by the mother.
Right, but that is true, but they're not the originals.
No, they're not the originals.
So now wherever she's, from or whatever, that's a business. But they're not the original bloodline of those thrones. That's the key. Because you have melanated folks that's not even claiming who they are.
Yeah, that's true. But Merkel, whatever, she is supposedly a Plantagenet, and the legitimate bloodline of James the First and Sixth.
Okay, so she's mulatto then, or she got melanated in her family.
Yeah, the one he just married.
Oh, you know who I'm thinking about?
Thinking about Merkel.
I'm thinking about the Germany lady.
That's why I'm like, why am I having so much trouble with this question?
So I'm like, no, that Germany lady. Yeah. You talking about old girl that's from here that's married to.
Yes. You see, they're trying to legitimize themselves through her.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, yes. Now, speaking of that, do you see now why they would pick someone from the Americas, a melanated woman, because based on what we're learning tonight or throughout this series, if that bloodlines were sent to the Americas from those English or European kingdoms, then it would make sense why they would pick her, because she may have, I don't know the lady's bloodline, but she may have indigenous America's blood as well as royalty blood. So in other words, if she does have European royalty blood, she the only fucking pure one out of all of them.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying.
I thought you was talking about the Germany.
No, that was Hitler's daughter.
That's why I was like, no, that's if blah blah blah. But yes, you're absolutely
correct. That's Hitler's daughter, they say.
Yeah,
no, that wouldn't be from Merkel.
Yeah.
Hitler was not legit, not either.
Yeah.
So, I'm talking about this child that they just wrangled in on the quest of love to become that one. So now they trying to marry themselves into the line.
Right. But see, we knew that from the indigenous American side. Yeah, we knew that's what they were trying to do with her. But now with this information, I'm like, well, damn. That means, any melanated person or copper-colored people from the Americas could very well have
bloodline.
Exactly. Just like Strahan, his roots were traced as Charles, and I didn't catch whether it was Charles first or Charles second. It doesn't matter. But
I think it was
King Charles, was his 39th great grandfather.
Right.
So perfect example.
And then a lot of us come back from there too. But like I said, most of us started out in Mayan culture, and then migrated over there. and then they came over and marauded and took us down. Now that's how I understand it to be.
And that
and
very
then
well
they shipped,
could be the case.
Yeah, they shipped us back over here, and then they took over. As it was like I think I call them the Golden Horde.
Mhm.
I used to talk about them, how they substituted themselves in, because the Greeks were melanated, the Irish was melanated, the Scottish were melanated, all of them were melanated, and then the Golden Horde came, like that movie Prometheus. That's because I was talking about that a while ago.
Right.
And that's
right.
how they did.
Right. Now, just to give a little bit more information, and then we're going to get into some more surnames. But before that, this is page 56, and he shows some images. And this particular image, he shows King Lud, L-U-D, 73-38 BC, founder of London. Now, this image is of Bucklersbury, Bank of London. This image of King Lud with his two sons was found at Lud Gate. This black image of King Lud has great significance because he is credited with being the founder of London. This image is of three black Scottish, Wales, and English kings. As you can see, the images date to 1667. The conjuncture surrounding this artifact is that it must be King Lud and his two sons, but the dating is off. King Lud lived between 73 BC and 38 BC. Secondly, King Lud was not the ruler of the world at that time. It was the Romans. The symbolism of the balls in the black king's hands is symbolic of world rulership. We are definitely talking about the Black Stuart kings of Scotland. Okay, so remember, Stuart is the maiden name of King James' mother. The only three kings that could satisfy this dating is King James I of England, Charles I of England, and Charles II of England. These black kings were from the Stuart line of kings, and Charles II was called Black Boy.
Black Boy?
Irish Black Boy.
Oh, wow.
The Irish, which would make sense if he was the last one holding that seat. The Irish, Brits, and Scots were the same people. If you have seen a Scot, you have seen the original Irishman. So he talks about the captives from Europe. And so he says Scottish captives were sent to Barbados, Boston, Charlestown, Cambridge, Concord, Hingham, Ipswich, Virginia, New England, Maryland. Irish captives were sent to, wow, now this is interesting. This is interesting. Amazon, 1612. I know, isn't that interesting? Now, that was in 1612. West Indies,
right.
Antigua, Montserrat, Virginia, New England, Barbados. This is another one that's interesting, y'all. Australia, Jamaica, Guyana. So those were the Irish captives. Wales captives sent to Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Idaho, Tennessee, Ohio, and Rhode Island. Okay. So just to give you some more background on the melanated king lines. Now, I do want to point out, and I want you all to keep in mind something when we get to the Tartaria Empire, because they talk about in Tartaria different crests where they claim that the Tartarian kingdom had their own crest. And this is actually how I busted them in mixing truth and lies with that whole Tartaria thing, because I looked at the crest that they claimed the Tartarian Empire had, and I saw it in all parts of the crest, actually most of the crest, in a lot of the Moors and the black royals or nobilities crest, and you'll see them holding what they call that ball in their hand as well. Okay, so now based on what we've been learning, we learn that when kings of that particular royal bloodline hold that ball and that scepter in the other hand, that's representing their Israel or Hebrew lineage. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so just keep that in mind when we get into that whole Tartaria series. Okay, so the next thing I just want to read, if anybody want to know, when they want to talk about the whole Africa ideology, Benjamin Franklin essay, and the video we just listened to, he kind of mentioned that, but here is the essay. And it's titled, America is a Land of Opportunity, author Benjamin Franklin, year 1751. And the subject, why increase the sons of Africa in America? Why should the Palatine Moors / Germans be suffered to swarm into our Pennsylvania settlements? They will never adopt our customs. Anymore can they adopt our complexion, white skin, all of Africa, Asia, and America, except for us are black. So I'm going to go over this again. This is not Rhonda's words. This is Benjamin Franklin essay from 1751. He was writing back to the crown. Why should the Palatine Moors / German, okay, so now I know the answer. When I was reading Palatine earlier, that they were German. Okay, I never knew that, but okay, whatever. Why should the Palatine Moors / Germans be suffered to swarm in our Pennsylvania settlements? They will never adopt our customs. Anymore can they adopt our complexion, white skin. All of Africa, Asia, and America, except for us, are black. Okay? So black, in this particular case, he's using it as indigenous to the land. He said, so Russia, Italy, Spain, France, Swedes, and the Germans are black. So now I'm going to read this again. Rhonda is not making this up. So let's be clear. When folks want to say that there were not copper-colored people on this land, okay, so now according to Benjamin Franklin, he wants to know, he writing back to his particular folks, why should the Palatine Moors / Germans be suffered to swarm in our Pennsylvania settlements? They will never adopt our customs. Anymore can they adopt our complexion, parentheses, white skin. All of Africa, Asia, and America, except for us, are black. Russia, Italy, Spain, France, Sweden, and the Germans are black. Okay?
Right.
So the author is just going on and saying that Benjamin Franklin himself is giving eyewitness on who was who regarding from a skin complexion perspective. So now I did not hear him just say all of Africa is black. He said Americas, with the exception of the Caucasians with the white skin, who was there as the colonization was ramping up. He said Americas, Africa, Asia, Russia, and that's going to be key when we talk about that Tartarian Empire.
Wow.
Russia, Italy, Spain, France, Swedes, and the Germans are black. So his complaint was he didn't want any Africans being imported into the Americas. Because they already had black folk there.
No more. Hey, did you notice that they say Palatine? Isn't that like the?
That's why I had got mixed up, and I'm like, what do they mean?
Remember they got them over there, Palestinians, like Palatines. They kind of mimicking it slightly to make it, make them people seem more legitimate over there.
He does say Palatine Moors / German.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it was the Moors from that region that came over to Germany.
Hey, Palestine Moors, yeah.
Yep. Now he didn't say Palestine.
I know, but it's really too close.
It's really, really close. Yeah. That's why I was thrown off when I was reading it earlier. I'm like, I don't know what he mean by that, but that makes more sense. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sean.
But didn't King James rule Germany too?
Yeah. France and Germany. Mm-hmm.
So that's the whole thing with him calling them Moors. And also my thing is, not once during King James or his lineage's conquest of everything over there did they ever refer to themselves as African or refer to the continent of Africa. Period.
No, they were very clear on who they were. They were very, very clear because they said they were also the Romans.
Mm-hmm. So
yeah, they were.
My thing is, all this is during the patriarchal system.
Yes.
And they are conquerors.
Yes.
And they were beat at their own game by the very things that he created.
Wow.
Exactly. I mean, all this is bringing everything into perspective as far as the Moors and Noah and the stories of Yaqub and their claims to everything. But they're making claims through a patriarchal system that is unnatural and unlawful within itself. So they can't actually gain any rights or get any reparations or anything like that because they were the originators of all this BS to begin with.
And I'm so glad you said that, Brother Sean, because that's the conversation that folks that know this information and amongst the melanated people don't want to tell the truth about. You're absolutely right, because if white folk were slaves, which they were the first slaves in Americas, they were the Slavs, how you going to give reparations to quote African Americans when Slavs were slaves also, and they were Caucasian or of white skin hue, and melanated folks owned slaves?
Yep.
But of their own admission, they were created to be slaves.
Yeah, they were.
What did you say, Brother Sean? I couldn't hear you.
They were created to be slaves. And I'm going to go back to Inky and the Nil, Anunnaki, all this.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And only had generations.
And the Vatican translator even said that that's why the Elohim created them.
Yes. Yes, and which would make sense why they never held the seat of power until later on. So, in other words, the rulership of who we're now calling Caucasians with the white skin have really just held those seats of power, really, to be honest, y'all, since the 1800s, but they totally didn't get total control until the 1900s. And next week, when we go into, because we still ain't done, we got to get up in Asia. We got to get to Asia, okay?
Into Istanbul.
So they haven't held the seat of power that long in the grand scheme of things. So I'm sorry, sis. Go ahead. You had something you wanted to put on it.
Like Istanbul and the Vedas and stuff like that in India, they were melanated too. All the Buddhas and all that kind of stuff, they're all melanated people.
Exactly. Absolutely. Okay.
That's great.
Yeah, but this is just to me. This makes a hell of a lot more sense, and there is proof and ship manifest, as well as statues, coats of arms, jewelry, pendants. This can be proven. Same thing with melanated folks in the Americas. Same exact thing. The first coinage of melanated folks by different states.
Right.
The whole tobacco industry, clearly those particular Indians were melanated. Clearly, they were melanated. Okay, so who they're calling the Native Americans really did not come into play until, after the Civil War, because they started bringing over the mixed Mongoloids to take on that identity as the Native Americans, but that was in the late 1800s.
I saw a documentary that the Native Americans are Syrians. One of the chiefs they captured during the war, he had an Assyrian pouch on him. They took a picture of it.
Yep. And somebody, think Medicine Man, one of them brothers was having a debate with a Native American, and he told him, "No, man, you're an Assyrian."
Yeah, they're Assyrians.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I do want to get into the surnames. All right, and so he gives his sources on page 54 and 55. So James Anderson, author of the Book of Riddles of Prehistoric Times. Professor Winchell Alexander, author of Our Remote Ancestors, 1818 to 1900s, collection of journals. Roman historian Tacitus, I may be pronouncing that wrong. The origins of the Black Britons. Anthropological Review Society, Volume 8, London. The Iberians are black people. And that's going to be important when we go to that Tartarian stuff. Author Ivan Sertima, African Presence in Early Europe.
Mm-hmm.
The Brits look like Ethiopians. 6, author Joseph Ritson, Annals of Chaldeanians, Picts and Scots, Volume 2, page 727. Dr. Thurnham, author, Nature Journal of Science. And then, of course, Benjamin Franklin's essay, 1751. And just another excerpt out of that essay, he said, all Africans is black or tawny. So tawny is meaning black. Asia, chiefly tawny/black. And in Europe, the Spaniards, French, Italian, Russians, Swedes, and the Germans are of what we call a swarthy or tawny or black complexion. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So those are his two sources that he are naming. So again, I want to know, how can people just say folks are from Africa?
They're not.
Exactly.
I want to
bring
out something about the Ashkenazim Jews.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them have straight hair, and some of them have extremely curly hair, like real dry, frizzy, like a natural.
Mm-hmm.
And they're out of Africa. Out of Russia. So they can pretty much say they are kind of like melanated, you think?
You would think.
You would think, because certain percentages of Jews are all absolutely like our hair, real thick afros,
real coarse,
real coarse and real curly, and I said, good God, you need to put some oil in that one.
Right. Like, baby, let you go on and get with somebody melanated to show you how to take care of that Brillo pad.
Yeah, that Brillo pad. And then they really, but see, some of them can really say they are Jews because they kind of.
Yeah, because of the mixing. Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I don't have a problem with anyone, saying who they are, whatever. If that's what you feel, fine. All I am is putting the information out there to the family, and especially for those trying to tell other people who they are.
And they can't.
You can't.
You can't.
It's each individual's responsibility to trace who they are, because black was all over.
Everywhere.
You just can't say black meant African, because clearly it did not. It didn't. That came from Benjamin Franklin's mouth, and he named pretty much the whole entire, not pretty much, he named the entire planet.
Yeah, he did.
With the description of black or tawny. need to be clear when they throw around these generalizations that black meant African and meant if you were an American, you were by default an African slave.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so
did you remember you mentioned that some of them, the Benjamin Franklins were very few in number? You remember you mentioned that?
Yeah, well, I ain't say that now. That's what Benjamin Franklin said.
I know it. So how did they get so many in number?
Because we know how that happened because they started immigrating folks here. And not only here, that's how South America, certain parts of South America became white.
Right.
And all other places because they were importing folks here.
I mean, importing us out. That's right. You're right. They were taking them, bringing them here, and throwing us out.
And they were trying to throw us out, but it was so many of us that it just could not be done. Because remember, they were trying to ship us over to Africa, and that didn't work out so well. Exactly, because then wars started breaking out over there, because it's like, who the hell are you? I don't give a damn about none of that. You're not from here. No, y'all not coming over here with that colonization crap. Okay, but the mass might. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brother Sean.
But if you think about it, just about all the countries that King James had rulership over all wound up with colonies over here.
Yep.
So when they usurped his bloodline, they took over all those places too.
Absolutely.
So through his conquest,
that's right.
That's how all these different people are trying to make claims to the Americas. And that even brings off into the so-called Henderson claim.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And being given authority or being given land over here where he allegedly holds the trust or this, that, or the other. It's all through conquest, and it's all unlawful.
Yes.
So,
absolutely.
To me, if you even trying to claim anything over here that was taken through conquest, it explains why you're going through what you're going through. Sins of the father shall befall the son. Y'all keep trying to claim ill-begotten gains.
Yep.
It ain't happening.
Nope.
It's over. So when we say it ain't just about quote-unquote white folks, it ain't, because they ain't the real reason behind all this. They're really not. To get in where they fit in. They learned the game.
Got in. They saw an opportunity, and they
took it. The Moors taught them. Ain't that what they said?
Yeah.
They said that they taught them.
That's what they said.
Yep. They saw an opportunity, and they took it. And that's why I kept trying to express, go back and look at those charters that were issued in the Americas for them to start colonizing the land. And they go back to the thrones of Europe. And now we know that those particular folks were melanated folks. So that goes back to France, because France had colonies over here too. We know the Brits, and then now the Dutch is the only one. I'll have to do a little research to see if the Dutch were melanated or not. Now that I cannot sit up here and lay claim to that. I would have to research that. Sorry, go ahead, sis.
Excuse me. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I have a burning question. So, when and how did we get that 400 years the slave issue?
I want to know, sis. Shit.
I know.
I had to throw the shit on the end of that. Yeah, I want to know. The only thing I can see, sis, is that they're calculating 1619.
Yeah. Or the prophecy of Abraham, your children will go into slavery into Egypt. So, I mean, really, how did that happen? If we're all moved around like slaves by them once they start conquering us. And that's a long time ago. So when did they start? When did that timeline start?
When people start associating everything with the Bible.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
But people say that they're conscious, but they still associate everything with the Bible when we predate the Bible.
Well, yeah, we do predate the Bible. And, we also, and another thing, too, the same people that James hated, the Catholics, rule the world.
And they were melanated. Let's be clear.
The started ones, yeah. The ones that started were melanated.
Right, the started ones. Yeah, they were melanated.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Same bloodline.
It would have to
remember
be
they were the Romans.
Right? Exactly.
They were the Romans. And as people see, whatever identity the elite took on, when they enslaved people, they try to make them become that. And people still hold on to them slave names, whether you're talking about Moors or Commissions or all of those were people that were ruled. And if you wasn't of that bloodline, then you weren't of the elite.
Exactly.
You put yourself in those places and you're not the elite, and you saying you was a slave. So you still keep getting the same treatment no matter what you claim.
Yep. Indeed. So I want to, because we got 15 minutes left, or 14 minutes left. So now this is chapter 5. This is the Berlin Conference. To further the English Manifest Destiny program, a meeting was convened in Berlin 1884/1885 called the Berlin Conference, in which 14 English white nations, okay, so now you're starting to see where the change of power is really coming into play, called the Berlin Conference, in which 14 English white nations attended for the purpose of dividing and colonizing Africa. Okay, skirt. I thought folk claimed that most of the slavery in America came from Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Although last week I went through the list of the particular Europe nations that had colonies, and I gave the associated dates. And I just simply pulled that off of Wikipedia. That wasn't hard to do. And yet again, in this particular book, he's saying, and those dates were in the late 1800s and 1900s on forward. I think it was only one of those nations that was in the 1600s. Okay, and it was a small one at that. Okay, but yet again, he's saying at this Berlin Conference, 1884, 1885, that they came together to colonize Africa. Hey.
It says. in that Benjamin Franklin essay, remember, he said all of Africa was black or Tommy.
Yes.
So that was why he was here and saying it was all black and Asia.
Yes. Yep.
So, I mean.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of lies, so.
Yeah, a lot of lies told and repeated over and over and over and over again. So it goes, proof of this lies in the original Declaration of Independence penned by John Locke, where he states every man has the right to life, liberty, and property. It was reworded by Thomas Jefferson to say life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Land was the English plan from the very beginning. And they were only doing these particular white English folks. They were only doing what the that melanated bloodline had done before them. Okay, that's all they were doing. But anyway, it was reworded by Thomas Jefferson to say life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Land was the English plan from the very beginning. What you will find interesting is that according to Benjamin Franklin's essay in 1751, the bulk of these nations were black prior to the Berlin Conference. Okay, so here we have a reference of points that power really started to take place with the white folks or the white Europeans at this point around the late 1800s. Okay. All right. So it says, and we talked about this because we read that several times. So he just went back over that Asia, chiefly tawny, American, wholly so. In Europe, the Spaniards, French, Italian, Russians, and Swede are generally what we call a swarthy black complexion. Okay, and so he just again, the author went through a table listing in 1751. So this just proves our point. 1751, when Franklin wrote that, black France, black Italians, black Russian, black Swedes, black Germans, black America, black. Now, at Berlin's conference, 1884, 1885, so they was warring heavily in between that time. And that also lines up with the black Europeans being deported over to the Americas. So now you have France, white, Britain, Ireland, white, Scotland, UK, white, Germany, he put a question mark, Portugal, white, Italy, he put a question, Netherlands, white, Spain, white, Sweden, white, Norway, white, Russia, he put a question mark, and then the Ottoman Turks, he put a question mark. Okay. So let me see what else. I'm trying to get it all in here, y'all. Okay, 58, why World War I happened. That's what I want to talk about. Okay. All right, so in this conference, we have 4 nations that attended the conference that have not changed yet. Why were they invited? We will see going forward in the future that these small things are setting the stage for World War I and World War II. If you take a closer look at the list, Germany was invited to the Berlin Conference, but they are still a swarthy people until World War II. The Ottoman Turks. I'm sorry, sis. Go ahead.
And then until World War II.
That's what blood say.
So rise to power.
Huh?
Hitler's rise to power.
So when they went in there killing the Germans,
they were
saying,
there you go. There you go. There you go.
So the Holocaust is killing us.
Yeah, it was killing melanated people. That's why you even got white people, or these so-called Jews, admitting on their deathbed that they lied, that it was made up, this, that, or the other.
Yeah. They were killing us. Because Miriam Anderson,
and
I
they
think...
get reparations for it.
Yep.
They get reparations for it.
Yep.
Yeah, they do.
Yep. So
Wow.
we're going to run out of time, so we're going to have to pick up on that next week because he's going to go into a little bit more about the World War I and II. And we're going to discuss them Germans. We're going to discuss them Germans, and we're going to discuss Japan, too. Our sister is hoarse. But
that was a lot of reading.
But it's good, and it's important for the family to know this information and to do the research. That's why I'm so adamant when folks come to me about who I supposedly am and how, most of the slaves were Africans. Okay, I don't have no problem with that. Just show me your information. So anyhow, sis, you have any last words for the family?
Well, like I said, I listened to David Duke and those guys today on Rinse Network, and they were talking about how the Germans were massacred during the World War II, and nurses, doctors, no matter what. And so, this is a lot of understanding. I knew most of the 6 million was us, but I didn't know the rest of us was who they were after. And this is really an eye-opener. And we hope it'll dispel the lies of how little our brains are and how we don't understand and we're not very good people. And maybe we can get some pride at how many lands we did actually run.
Indeed.
And I appreciate it.
Indeed, sis. Brother Sean, you have any last words for the family?
Yeah. Trump's immigration is forcing you to realize who you are.
Yes.
And where home is. That should be your focus. You've always been told to know thyself. And that aligns you with your purpose and where you're supposed to be. And what you are. Get to that frequency. Period.
Indeed. Indeed. Well, I do want to thank the family for joining us tonight. I want to thank all of the family callers for calling in, dropping a lot of great information. We will be back next week with part 4. We're going to get into the World War II, World War I, and World War II as it relates to melanated folks. So we're going to talk about the Germans, and we're also going to talk about the Japanese. So with that said, family, thank you so much. I appreciate your support and appreciate you joining us on this journey. We're going to rock out with some music because I know we're getting ready to get cut off. But peace and love, family.